Why? What happened when you were? What happens when you're sober?
We're unlubricated.
Unlubricated. Oh.
No, I think it's just because it's more conversational format, and so it makes a little more sense to like be drinking or doing something.
Jeremy and I never hang out and don't drink.
Yes, like even if it wasn't alcohol, I think it would have worked if it was just like juice with crackers and like
something.
Yeah, something that we share communally.
Totally dry.
When we're talking. So.
Unfed, and it wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. All right, so let me put this link out and let's get going. So anyway, hey guys, welcome to the show. It is July 23rd in the year 2022 of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I am back after several weeks of having a break. And the new kid is wonderful. His name is Augustine, and he is I have extremely high expectations for him. It's like his mother is already asking him, like, when are you going to be a doctor? And,
okay.
Yeah, she's Chinese.
You gave him the name, so it's.
Oh, your wife is Chinese.
Yeah. So nice and high expectations.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to I'm getting some decent sleep now, and we've finally figured out a system, and it's going great. But I've been absent for a few weeks.
A month ago, you said it was.
It's like 3 weeks. 3 weeks since she was born. And
babies are so tiny.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, this one was a giant.
As someone who came from a small family, and also I don't have any friends with babies except for you guys now.
Yeah.
It shocks me how tiny babies are when they're first around.
Yeah.
They're tiny, tiny little baby fingers.
Yes.
It's like I couldn't touch that. I'd break it on accident.
Yeah. And he's growing so quick. Anyway, but so all right, so we got some good topics that we've been talking about. We have a really good group chat going called Inquisitor Torquemada's Catholic Boys. And for those who don't know, Inquisitor Torquemada is one of the best Catholics we've ever had. And
who is that? Do you know who it is?
Tomas de Torquemada.
Who is that?
That was the head of the I think it's the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, the Inquisition.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got rid of those Albigensians.
Of course, we needed to. So we need to do it again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, we need them back. I mean, we need like the reincarnation of Tomas Torquemada.
Yes, yeah.
It's just like the name Torquemada. It's like Man Twister or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have this great group chat going, and before I tell you all,
Power Rangers.
Nah, that's a game.
You were before the Hylomorphin Power Rangers was.
Oh yeah.
Was before your time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But before we get into that, I want to tell you all about Paloma Verde CBD. Now, I am them Carlos an extra special shout out tonight because he also sent me a free sample of his CBD tincture unflavored, which holy crap, it's been really helping. It's been really, really helping. And like, you have no idea. These babies do not sleep. I mean, it is incredible. Like, they do sleep, but not when you're sleeping. It's only like 1 or 2 hours at a time. And so I needed that extra hit to keep me sane and like not hallucinating. And my God, has it been helping? And I mixed them earlier to mix that 1300 tincture earlier tonight with some very special brownie mix, and like they came out very, very nice, to say the very least.
That's actually something
nice.
I as someone with horrible chronic sleep issues for my entire life, CBD is actually one of the greatest things I've ever found as far as just knocking me out.
Yeah.
I'm constantly it's pathological a bit, but I'm constantly chasing
it makes a huge
drowsiness
difference.
And there's something.
Yeah.
CBD's good.
It's like, yeah, I mean, it makes such a difference for me when I'm on it versus when I'm off. And like, especially for the last few weeks. And you guys don't know, most of you guys are not fathers, but you're going to have to take my word for it. This stuff really, really works. Then that's why you should buy it, using the promo code popular at checkout at palomaverdecbd.com. This stuff is life changing.
Dude,
it's
your promo code is popular. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Obviously, it's the most popular one. I gotta tell you, like, there's other things I use, like this salve rub for whenever I get an injury because I work out a lot, and there's also something they have a sports cream, and which is like by far the best I've ever like tried. But what I actually started using it for now was because I'm not like these guys where, I can, really grow facial hair. Well, it's always patchy, never came in right. But so I accept that this is who I am. So I need to shave. It's genetic. My dad has a baby face and he had a baby face until he was in his 40s.
You're not a bearded king like we are.
No. And I'm never going to be, but that's okay. So when I'm shaving, it's like I actually started putting this sports cream into like the, that aftershave rub. And it really helps. It really, like cuts down on all the razor burn, cuts down on any pain afterwards, has a nice cool feeling to it, which is really, really nice. And so it's like they have all kinds of really good products there that are very, very well worth your value and actually very affordably priced. And if you use promo code popular at checkout, you get 20% off of your order and $75 off. I'm sorry, not $75 off. At 20% off orders over $75 and free shipping. And well worth it. So you guys need to check out all of that stuff. So
yeah, I'll let Jeremy know.
All right, so I was telling you, you guys were, we were telling the guys about this amazing group chat that we have, Tomas Torquemadas, Catholic boys, and so. We've had quite a number of conversations in there in the past, few weeks, but like the really hard hitting, questions about, orthodoxy versus Catholicism, libertarianism, and its problems and its benefits, but like ass or tits, and all of the greatest. This thing is like the School of Athens.
Yes.
What did Jeremy say? Ass, definitely ass.
Yes, of course.
No,
of
course.
That's just objective. There's no debate to be had.
Exactly.
Because every preference you have is natural.
Yes. That's
of course. Speaking of natural preferences, like the things we've been we've been talking about a lot lately is this topic of like God's existence and how that relates to our existence and how we're supposed to behave towards other people. And I was listening to an episode you guys did on Murray Rothbard's Anatomy of the State. And I actually thought this is, there are some things in here I'm like, okay, they kind of like took the what the libertarians are saying, and they parsed what it says, not what it means. And there were a few times in there where I'm like, okay, I kind of need to correct the record on this one here, because the problem with anarcho-capitalism, like I can tell you right off the bat, is that they changed the definitions of everything. This, that the whole idea of what they're talking about should not be anywhere near the word anarchy. Like this is, it's like to say they're, what like the vision of the world that they're looking at and say that has no rulers in it. It's like, no, that has quite a lot of rulers. Yes. And it's like, hold on, this is like the most ruled society anyone's ever imagined is what they're talking about. And they call it no rulers. And that, immediately makes normal people think chaos. Which is what
generally anarchists generally mean when an anarchist says ruler, they mean ruler they don't like.
No, that's all it means.
Who or isn't me. Ruler
so they put qualifiers in there, which is just kind of ridiculous. Because they literally do that with any kind of concept. You could say that, what is a president? Well, he's not a real president because I don't like him. That's basically what you said. Well, no, there's an actual definition that that it should go by. And I think many times when you use something that has been used for so long, you kind of have to leave it alone. It isn't as if this is kind of a new word that was presented that we could kind of modify in the present time. It was like anarchy anarchia is an ancient Greek term that was used specifically. Like if you read Plato's Republic, he uses it as a state of lawlessness. And so, you like he presents proper forms of government where you have like monarchy, a bad form of that is tyranny. You could have aristocracy, a bad form of that is oligarchy, and so on and so forth. Like anarchy is a state where where you just have lawlessness. So there is no law and there's no rule.
Well, what is a ruler? It's like the guy who gives you the rules and enforces them.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's like a simple definition.
It's really obvious too. It's like, this is what that means.
It's contained in the word itself.
It is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then to take like the vision of the world they're talking about, which is like really a, heavily centered on property rights and the natural law, and then say there's no ruler here. I'm like, what? Like, this makes no sense. And
there's no rulers they don't like there.
Well, it's like you're confusing people right off the bat. And so it's and they do this with all kinds of words: capitalism, free markets, and aggression.
Immediately triggered.
I know. It's like they do it with all of these different words. It's like they have their own little unique definitions for it, and that are not the normal definition. If you just use the normal definition, it makes a lot more sense. And like all of their ideas make so much more sense. And there were a few times in the episode where I was thinking like, okay, what we really need to do is start off with this idea, and I think this is at the root of libertarianism, like is based off this first principle. I have to say that in quotes of self-ownership. It's not really a first principle because what's a self? What's ownership?
Yes,
those are very particular words.
Yes,
those don't have like no presuppositions in them. And really makes a difference how you define them.
How dare you make them think about that?
I know. And so it's like if you want to start like debunking libertarianism, you immediately start at the presupposition and start at the root. And it's like where I think that it kind of goes off the walls right at the beginning is materialism. It's like like the moment because you have materialism and there you have no real morality. So how do you have ownership, which is a moral claim of possession?
Yes.
It's like so it's like you can say, hey, I have possession of this and this, and by the way, all of the like the really, really good thinkers like Rothbard, Mises, Hoppe, they're very explicit if you're reading them. Like, this is all subjectivism. We're not talking about an objective morality here. But when you listen to libertarians argue, they're always arguing on the premise that this is objectively moral and true. Like, no. And that is not what that's not, the actual people who wrote the thing knew what they were talking about, and they knew that scope that they were in. And whereas, if you're wanting to kind of debunk libertarians, you immediately start there at materialism, because it immediately destroys their concept of objective ownership. And because if there's no real objective morality, then you can't have a moral claim of ownership, and you can't have a moral claim of possession. And so that just physically can't exist. It would be subjective morality, means it's only exists in your head. So, in other words, not really real. And so,
it becomes preference, basically.
Exactly.
Like every subjective moral claim is just my preference versus your preference, and so then everything just becomes meaningless. But that's just that really is a difficulty with many modern theories in general, because it comes from a subjective point of view, and so there's always going to be those complications, because they also do the non-aggression principle. And but I mean, to what is that based on? Like, why should we not be aggressive? And they don't really give you
aggression is anything that makes them feel uncomfortable in any way,
right? And so why is that
physically?
Why not to do that? They try to appeal to some kind of like Newtonian version of natural law, where they say basically that it violates their self-ownership or whatever, or their autonomy, but they're not really grounding that into anything coherent.
No,
it just becomes an incoherent comprehension of it, because once you do accept like a Newtonian or Lockean view of natural law, you bind yourself to the definition of nature as being that which was untouched by man. And once you accept that definition, there is nothing else in nature that is not aggressive. Right? I mean, there's nothing. Yes. And so really, if you were to take that definition of natural law,
that tornado's looking pretty aggressive.
Yes, you need to be even hyper aggressive at that point, because to be more true to the nature of what it means to exist as an animal in the world would be to be an aggressive son of a bitch that takes what he wants.
Yeah,
that is, and this goes back to Nietzsche. I think Nietzsche was much more coherent, because in the end, he said everything's will to power, because he doesn't even like the claims of the biologists of the time. We have the same claims now, which is like what is that, the idea that we have a will to live, or will to reproduce, with that you find with fucking, what's that evolution guy name?
Evolution guy
Darwin,
name?
yeah.
Evolution guy
yeah.
name.
So Darwinism posits, a will to exist constantly, right? So everything is a will to reproduce because it wants to continue its existence.
Mm-hmm.
He even says that's not really what, if you have this understanding of nature as that which is untouched by man, really fundamentally it's always a will to power. It's always a will of aggression.
Yeah. It's a power projection game.
It is, right. And so so when they begin to appeal to that sense of natural law, no, the non-aggression principle makes absolutely no sense, because you cannot defend it from
well, they also don't necessarily believe in natural law.
No, but the ones that do,
like Rothbard actually talks about it.
He does.
Remember, he was saying that, hey, that which is natural to man is peace and prosperity and cooperation, and what is unnatural to man is to make him a beast and a predator.
Yeah, but it's not natural to fallen man.
Yeah, not just that, but a material point of view.
Yes, it has a wrong understanding of what is natural.
Yeah,
he's simply saying that the natural state, if there was no government imposing its will, they truly believe that people would just be in peace and harmony with mutual exchange and consensual, which means
they've never operated in the world as
and
professionals and business owners.
That's why I think that's bullshit.
They've never played a game of soccer before.
Yes, or chess.
Yes. They've never played a game of Monopoly with children before.
Yes, or adults. I played with adults. It gets pretty fucking aggressive.
I know it does.
Well, so, and even in what they consider to be like real world examples of anarchism, is the one they never ever want to talk about is like the Book of Judges. It's like there's a real anarchical covenant right there. And like the whole point of it, you find out in the New Testament is like, okay, I'm going to show you why this doesn't work, because you stupid monkeys aren't going to believe me if I tell you just don't do it. So I mean, like Paul in the New Testament is like, okay, the whole point of this was, he said it a little bit nicer than that, but the whole point was, God showing the man like you can't rule yourself. It's like this isn't going to work. You need me. And and like the state is not the problem. It's like the absence of the state is not going to fix the problem. Yes, exactly. It certainly didn't with the judges, and boy was that a shit show. It's lasted like roughly 400 years, and you're talking like what, 16 invasions and one usurpation by Abimelech. It's like oh, warlords won't be a problem. It's like cue Abimelech coming again. It's like, oh hi, I'm a warlord. I'm gonna take over. What's up, king? Or like dictator, and it was
at least it's anarchist.
Yeah, exactly.
At least I consented to this.
Yeah,
and like by the end of it, they're like, all right, we can't do this whole anarchism thing. Can you just give us a king?
And
and like, but like they're not asking for a king. Like the whole problem with because it's set up in like 1 Samuel 8 as like, oh, it's this really bad thing. He's going to be an awful king who's going he's going to put like basically the equivalent of a 10% income tax on you. And I read that for the first time.
It's pretty fantastic. Honestly,
like, great, only 10. Like I want that king too. It's like this guy's like amazing. So but like the problem there was like it wasn't that they were asking for a king per se. It was that they didn't want God as lawgiver. Basically they wanted it for the wrong reason. Because like the whole problem is you need God, and he needs to be the one giving you the laws and writing these laws on your heart, et cetera, et cetera.
You're referencing one of the passages that that anarchists reference in their kind of their synthesis of anarchy,
Oh,
anarchism, and Christianity. Yeah,
they're misinterpreting it. They're being a very Protestant.
Yes.
It's like, well, again, libertarianism is just one kind of Protestant. You know, the reformers.
It is,
Well, it's like literally, it's like this is what happened was the reformers kept reforming the church until they reformed Christ out of it.
Yeah,
right. Yes,
They reformed Christ and God out of the church, and that's how we got liberalism and progressivism and all the fantastic isms of the 20th century that we know and love. Libertarianism is the best of them, and you know, other ones like fascism and socialism and progressivism not so much.
I like fascism better than libertarianism.
Well,
aesthetically speaking, at least they look good. But
I like monarchism better than all of those.
Oh, of course,
of course.
But basically, if you're going through, this, and you're trying to identify, the state is the problem, and like, no, state is like just one manifestation of the problem, which is man is fallen, and you need to be.
Guess who else is the problem? You.
That's right. They need to be good Catholic. That like the solution is obviously the Catholic Church.
It is,
which is what we want to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not ideal to stick a sword to somebody's head and make them convert, but right now we should. It's fine. It's not ideal.
We need another Inquisition or another Charlemagne.
Well, that's what my whole channel is about. Is that here's how we actually do this
crusade.
Well, it's how we do it the lawful way. It's like, hey, instead of the divine right to rule, as what Rothbard talked about, what you need is the property right to rule, which, property right, which is, of course, founded by the natural law. And, Pope Leo XIII says that, property right is sanctioned by the natural law as, lawful and good. And so, and of course, the natural law comes from God. That's how you can get a real divine right to rule. Is that it is a right that descends from God to the state, which they are then supposed to pass on to everybody else. And if they don't, you're kind of fucked, and you don't really have that right.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's why this idea that you can have a negative right, that this is something that definitionally doesn't exist. By its own definition. It's like an absence. I have a right to not be
aggressed against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I hate the non-aggression principle so much. Really. I want to fucking punch them whenever they bring that up.
No.
Non-aggression principles are okay. You just need to get your ass kicked. I'm sorry. I was like, have they never been punched in the face? Many times I wonder about that. It just never occurred to them? Nothing, it never happened. Maybe they grew up in a world in which people got kicked out of school for that, but
they have a zero tolerance policy of bullying.
Before, like, I was how old was I? Like 6 years old, I think, 5 or 6 years old. My brother knocked out my front tooth when he kneed me in the face and punched me and all that shit. It's like that's what these people need.
Oh my God, these children are violating the non-aggression principle.
It's like, no, we need to do that again. There shouldn't be this zero tolerance bullshit in school. It's just getting fights, punch.
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah,
when I was in the 5th grade, I got called into the principal's office for violating the no guns on campus policy.
Ooh,
and
did you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like what I did.
State was this that you grew up in?
Florida.
Okay.
Florida child is called into principal's office.
Oh yeah. Turns out the principal was a lesbian, so it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense in retrospect. I didn't realize that at the time.
Did you recoil from her as a child?
Oh, I told her, my mommy says this school is not very good, and because you guys don't challenge me very well, like, to her face. But like, no, because what I did, I went bang bang with a finger gun to my best friend, who was like laughing and like pretending to be dead. And it's like, this is this is what I got sent to the principal's office for. It's like,
really?
So I was sent to the principal's office my first day of kindergarten because
good for you.
Did you go?
I've been monarchially disposed my entire life. They make us line up to go out for recess.
Oh yeah.
And there was one kid not standing in line properly, and I became so aggressive trying to get this kid to stand in line properly that they sent me to the principal's office.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just makes me sound autistic, really, but
this is not ordered correctly.
You're not.
And that was But that story was when I realized, oh, so the adults are really stupid. Oh,
well, she's a lesbian, first of all.
Yeah, it's like these are just absolute fools, and I credit God for giving me that lesson early on in life, because it started me to down the path of realizing, oh, the adults don't really have it all figured out. They're clear. They clearly have problems, and I can see this as like a fifth grade. No, actually, I would have been a fourth grader. And it's like I learned that one young, like, oh, they don't actually have this all figured out. They're kind of just making it up as they go along, and they really can't think for themselves. This is not good because I'm ruled by these people. It's like all the decisions are made for me by these people, and so that was eventually where I first became a libertarian, and eventually because I realized, oh, I need to be the authority. It's like, oh, this is not good. And I think that's where it comes from. I think it's like you've had some bad experience with authority, and that's convinced you that, like, oh, all authority is bad and this must be rejected, that you can't have someone else giving you the rules. You have to be the one giving them to yourself. And that doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that, because that what really turned it around was that I also had a lot of really good authorities in my life. And so it's like, I couldn't just obviously blanketly get rid of all authority and say that this is not, that all authority is bad. No, it's just like some of these guys are idiots. And we just need a system to remove the idiots. And it's like, that's what we really need. Is like we, and it's that, and I think like there is what I think, but libertarianism, because it's called like the libertarian to alt-right or reactionary pipeline, and the pipeline is very real. Let me tell you.
What does reactionary mean? Because to me, reactionary is a negative.
Kind of, basically, what they're saying is, oh, the right is always reactive. I'm like, no, but it's just an old word that kind of
what we conceive of the right is generally reactive now, practically speaking, like American politics generally. But to me, right. No. I don't think anything. I don't think in politics anything is any real anything really. But it's when I hear reactionary, it's not a positive.
Well, yeah, basically it's like, okay, the people who were like in the 1600s, the people who were reacting to the Enlightenment and the spread of liberalism and trying to crush it, like basically it's like kind of a euphemism for like counter-reformation guy. Like that, at the basically you back then you were a Catholic who was like saying, oh, this is bad, this is really going to end up in like the devastation of society, we really need to oppose this liberalism thing. It's like, you're just a reactionary.
So is it an example of a term devised by the opposition that was co-opted?
Kinda
integrated into the
and because at that point there's like the church was basically playing defense. And it's like like you can't win on defense, which was like the bad it's like they were using like an old playbook with like, okay, we're going to have a church council, we're going to condemn the whole Reformation thing that's like spawning liberalism, and then we're just going to call it a day. Okay, it's been condemned, we're okay now. And no, that's not the paradigm we're in now. The paradigm we had entered like roughly a century earlier, before the Reformation, was what happened was that, hey, you've discovered the Americas, and Columbus sailed the ocean blue in like 1492, and so actually we're only talking about like half a century earlier. And so what did happen like a century earlier was you began really the process of the states are getting sick and tired of the Pope winning every single political conflict, every single one. And it's no matter who's fighting, Rome always wins. And that they were getting sick and the states were getting sick and tired of the Pope's authority. And so you fast forward into like the time of the Reformation, and like the Pope is literally at war with the Holy Roman Emperor. You have Pope Julius II, and he's literally leading a papal army against like the Holy Roman Emperor. It's in whose territory Luther and Calvin are spreading their heresy.
Exactly.
And you also have like he's also at war with the French. you know, the French king, the king of the Franks. And so it's like the two, you know, like the places where we had like the worst of the Reformation, you know, where it's like where like it spread the fastest was where it was spreading because it had nobles backing it who were giving it money and like, you know, throwing money on the fire of heresy. And what, you know, with like the whole reason that we had a Reformation was the state was funding it. And by the way, also the same reason we had like the Great Schism. You know why? It's like we you know, you know, when the you know, like when all of these spiritual issues, these divides between you know, because these doctrinal issues with the Orthodox, like they weren't an issue for like the first like, you know, 6 centuries that they had been around. And they only began to be it was like right around the time that, you know, just coincidentally coincided with the Pope crowning Charlemagne as King of the Franks. And I'm sorry, Holy Roman Emperor, 801. And like it's literally like just like you know, this is when Empress Irene is really, really pissed because like we like literally stole the Holy Roman Emperor title from her. And she was, and so it was like a chick who was in charge of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. So obviously this isn't going to work. We know this is going to be a disaster. It's like she blinded her son, you know, to keep him from ascending to the throne because he wanted to be. It's like, hey, my dad died. I'm the real Holy Roman Emperor. You're just my regent. How about I take over for your mom? It's like blind. And so like, you know, we're like, all right, so this chick clearly can't be in charge. We're going to you know, give it to someone a little bit more competent, like Charlemagne. It was like 6'2" in the time when the average man was like 5 feet tall. This dude was like a giant, and he's amazing too. And you know, I love Charlemagne. And so like the you know, so right around this time is when they're getting, I was like, oh, actually, you know, all of those like doctrinal issues, they started to become a little bit more political. And eventually, like, you know, I think it's like 50 years later, you get to like Photius, you know, the Photian Schism, where there was like literally this is a political power struggle, like it's just a very naked political power struggle between you know, the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, because you know, it's like the Holy Roman Emperor is like, all right, they literally stole the title of Holy Roman Emperor from me, you know, a little bit ago. You know, like I better make sure that can't ever happen again. So I was like, I'm really, what I need is my own Pope. And so this is around the time when you start getting like the that title, like ecumenical patriarch. Wink. It's like that starts coming along and starts getting like thrown around, and eventually in 1054, like the whole you know, with this whole thing escalated. Like this was what, you know, what happened was like his name was like Patriarch Michael something, I can't remember, I never can remember his last name. It was one of those weird.
Me either, but it is Michael.
Yeah, it was Michael something, and he literally was going around like, I'm the ecumenical patriarch. I'm basically the new Pope. I have a universal jurisdiction, and and after like, you know, like 200 years of the you know, popes getting like, dude, that's not what we believe with the filioque. You're misconstruing our, you know, what we're talking about with Lent and fasting and all that, and you're just like literally lying about us. I mean, it's like literally fake news of the I mean, you know, like the whole filioque controversy is like fake news of the 9th century.
Of course, they still do that. I mean, whenever you discuss with
I'm even just hearing the word filioque, I fly into a rage.
Exactly.
It's all bullshit.
And so like you know, this is, you know, like you get to this point where the Pope's like, all right, you know, those really are issues. You guys are all excommunicated now because like they're trying to steal his title. So he's like, all right, you start like, I stole a title from you guys, or like my predecessor stole a title from you guys. So now they're trying to steal a title from me, and I know better than to let that happen because, you know, I'm the Pope. I'm a master politician. And you know, it's like this is, you know, this whole thing going all the way back even like to Constantinople. This was the problem, you know, with like you had a state that wanted you know, the Pope for, you know, political legitimacy, and we weren't really giving it to them. And so, and you get all the way to like same problem at the Schism, same problem at the Reformation. This is it's a constant problem that we've had, that heresies always spread with the state. Even like Arius, he had like half of Constantinople backing him.
I forgot what the percent of bishops, but there was a huge percent of the bishops that were Arians.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And it's go
like
ahead.
The one thing that I always think with these kind of descriptions, we always have to be a little more, I guess, just intellectually careful of is whether we're saying that that's the cause or the
proliferation mechanism is what I use.
Yeah. It's like the means in which how these heresies begin to get spread, because I don't really think they're the cause for it. It's the same way like this is completely not religious, but like the way that we're talking about the pharmaceuticals input within mental health care. It is like you can't really separate the fact that without the funds in which the pharmaceutical companies give to the academia in order to do research to justify them to give more drugs, that it's there, right? You can't deny that. But what came first, the idea that all things are material, so we reduce the mind to the matter, or the pharmaceutical companies that kind of invest their money into spreading this lie? And I always think that it's actually the ideology that comes first, but then the spreading of the ideology comes because it is backed either by large organizations, by the state, or because they're unified with somebody with power that can actually.
There's a power structure behind it.
Yeah,
that is not just the state. It's
a power corporations. Yeah. It could be anything.
This is a point you guys were making on your show that I thought was really, really good because, like, if you say that, okay, the production aspect, the private aspect is what's natural and good to man. Therefore, it's going to be all holy and everything's good. Men are going to behave like angels. You are going to be disappointed. Like, boy, are you wrong. It's like, it's like, have you seen like what the corporations are doing today? It's like they literally locked us down in our houses for like 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
To try to make a buck. And it's like they ran so many people out of business. Just for like, a cough.
It's like Rothbardian anarchists. I don't even know what to call people.
Yeah, I'd call them consensualists.
Yeah, consensualists was I don't remember. It was the whatever episode we put out before when we streamed today. We've decided to call everyone different terms that are more accurate. So saying anarchist at all is almost uncomfortable. I just want to say consensualist.
Yeah.
It's like they have never interacted with a person who was self-interested enough to even just be like rude. Like they really haven't.
But I also think that when I said this, I know I said it jokingly, but I'm being serious, that I also think they're unsuccessful people.
Yeah.
Because
success requires some level of quote unquote would call aggression.
And so they meet people that are successful, and people that are successful are kind of assholes. Right?
Aggressive.
Yes. Yeah. And so when you start something, when you make something out of your life, even if you're not the wealthiest person, but like that's why I gave like the example of my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to survive what it takes to cross the border in that way. And then you met my mom.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, it's just
I won't say the C word on air, but
there's a level of assholeness, right? that I would say that is required in order to be successful. And so normally I have never met an anarchist that honestly has been successful.
Well, there's too nice.
Yeah. They normally are dropouts of whatever they're trying to pursue. So if they're trying to pursue college
education,
we've
had anarchists on air and said that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or if they try to start a business, they might have done it for 3 months, but then they quit because it's too much for them. Yeah. Like I've never met somebody that actually did something.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said they're losers. And I don't. and I mean that in the sense that they lose. Yes. Like they're constantly losing. They face the world. And
you're like post physique.
Yes. I don't know. You guys weren't online for this. I have a good friend. You guys I've been talking to. I've heard of Matt Erickson from King Pilled, and
I adore him.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, he's fantastic, and he had just a banger of a tweet about a year and a half ago that they will not let go. It was 3 simple words: stop being poor. And oh my Lord, it's like they have never let it go. I mean, it was like one of his like most retweeted, most replied, most liked, and he hit that nerve on the head And like this is where that comes from. It's like a lot of them are like very unsuccessful. It's not that they're unsuccessful, it's that they're young. It's like, and because unsuccessful goes with being young.
If they're not young, they're unsuccessful.
Yes, because I have met some older people that ascribe to that ideology,
but they're losers.
But they're losers still, right?
Yeah,
they like just play their guitar. They got their long hair, and they got
don't dunk on playing guitar.
I'm not saying
don't do that to me.
I'm not saying that playing guitars will make you a loser. I'm just saying the ones that I have.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
What I've met, dunk.
And this is like this is like my critique of them. It's like if you look at their demographics of libertarians, they're very young. I mean, like very early 20s.
Yeah.
And so it's like
if they're not young,
right?
There's something up.
Total loser.
Yes, but it attracts them because I've met young people that like I have a member for my that pays for my studio as membership fee, and he's how old would you say Joey is? 22. Yeah, like 22, right? And just from that early on, just picked up a camera when he was like 18, started to do shit, and now he built enough business to be able to like support himself and go to college and shit. It's like, I don't think it's just youth. I think it's a mentality. It's like,
but it's less common in young people.
It is less, but it's the sense that whenever I have that. Again, and then when you speak to them, the way they dress, the way they present themselves, they look different. Every anarchist has like this long hair, grungy loser that you look at and say, you don't even have to tell me what your career is. I know you're a loser. I know that you're single.
You don't have to tell me what your career is. I know you have none.
Yes, I know that you can't get pussy, that you really you find friends just in a certain.
You can't get any pussy with having.
Yes, with having
post physique.
Yeah, post physique. And you just the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, you're a loser. You want to stop being poor rather than complaining about the ones who subject you to the labor because they invested their time and money into it. Stop being a loser, right? Do something. You're tired of it.
Stop being a loser, period.
Yes, just do something about it. And that's what's frustrating whenever I talk to a consensualist, because they're not honest about anything. That they reform words, and not honest about themselves and honest about reality. They just want to put blame onto people who have done something with their life. And someone like someone like me who comes from a background where I have illegal immigrant parents. I have nothing. I lived in a van for for almost like a year when I was a kid with my parents trying to make it out there.
Yeah,
I should be a loser considering what I have. Whenever I see these black people and they complain about being black and their heritage being slaves, it's like, was your father born in this country? Did your father know English?
Don't talk about my father.
Yes, I think get pissed.
How dare you? And then you're like, I'm a quarter black, dude.
Yes, I'm quarter. Don't fucking complain to me about the fact that you have this inequality. You're fucking American.
Yeah.
Your father was born American. You have access to all this other shit. You have lineage of connections with people in this country.
Yeah.
Who did my dad know? He knew absolutely fucking nothing. He made connection with some Greeks in restaurants and started building something. That's what you
learned
do.
Greek.
Yeah. Yes, he learned Greek. My dad learned. A poor immigrant with a 4th grade education from Peru learned fucking Greek. And he said, "This is what I mean. It's like, you do things. Don't fucking complain." These blacks, the Black Lives Matter people, the consensualists, all these people, everything is just about bitching. It's like they just want to be, woe is me. I don't have this. I don't have this. Fuck you. You don't have it because you haven't got it, because you didn't have the balls enough to fucking get it. Don't be mad at me who comes from immigrant parents. I could build a fucking business and fucking thrive in it. They're losers. Shut the fuck up. If I want to enslave you, I get to enslave you because you weren't mad enough to do something about it.
I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. It's like, because where's it go back to? It went back to your father. It's like your first thing was appeal to a really good authority. It's like you had a good father. And and like, that was what really did it for me too. It's like, I had a good father. Yes. I had like, I mean, it was I had a troubled childhood, but but what really turned it around for me was I had a really good dad. who like I had a good authority. And that's something that, like you mentioned, blacks is like, okay, well, you're talking about a demographic that has
good dads.
Well, it's like 76% are born out of wedlock.
What's that high now?
Yeah, it's like 76%.
It's increased really since I last looked at it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's bad. And it's like, well, I mean, 100%. There you go. There's like, what does the church have? Tons of fathers. And it's we have this authority structure, which humans need. And if you're like saying, oh, humans don't need authority, they are their own authority. Like, no, because people aren't good at it. Most people really suck. They want to outsource it to someone who's better than them. It's like, you don't just let like 10-year-olds make their own decisions. Like this is not going to work out for you. It's not going to work out for them either. It's really not going to work out for them. And and like you need this, like even adult, and this is like what I learned young. It's like, oh, even the adults really need authorities, and because some of these guys are, it's like they need the authority as much as I need the authority, and I need them to be better authorities. You need good authority. Authority is a specialization. It's like this is like and it's something in demand. It's like, and you would think for a bunch of people who pride themselves on their economics, they were not gonna supply and demand. Like that demand usually leads supply. It's like people want something and they're willing to pay for it. So if someone's willing to pay something for for like something they want, like authority, it's like it's like someone's going to supply it. And so I mean it's supply and demand. People want authority. They want states. It's like that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate problem. Is that with like the this anarchist ideal of a stateless society. It's not without authority. It doesn't have no rulers. It has no state. That's it's a very big difference, and that's the problem. It's
not anarchist.
Yeah,
and the other thing is that when push comes to shove, they don't even really want what they claim to want. Because in all honesty, if you were to take any of these people who claim to be anarchists, these consensualists, and you were to say, I'm just going to drop you off somewhere and just exist. Just figure it out. Just do it.
I'm going to buy you a ticket to Myanmar.
Most of them would shit themselves. Okay, if you take them to a place of
this is an aggression.
Yes, but if you a place with no government, nothing, and just drop 20 of them and be like, okay, just do it, right? You want to build the society? I'm going to give you this piece of land.
Hey, I've bought you this plane ticket to Yemen.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you anything else. You figure out your own economics. You figure out your own trade. I'm not going to give you any money. Just do it.
They're like, but where's my Mac? My Mac?
Yeah. So first, be like, yeah, but what am I going to do?
How do I access Twitter?
Yeah,
I was told Bitcoin solved this.
And this is what I tell most young people, like some of my students when I give some of my lectures, I'm like, everybody in this classroom, you all want to be enslaved.
Yeah.
Because why else would you be in college? You're in college. Most of them are in college because they want to have a degree. Why do you want the degree? I'm going to walk through. Why do you want the degree? Well, it's because I want to have a better job. Why do you want a better job? I don't want to work at McDonald's anymore. Okay, so what do you do when you get a better job? I said, well, then I have a higher salary. Okay, so in the end, you're just looking for a different master.
Yeah,
it isn't as if you want to eliminate the master. You don't want to eliminate the boss that you have. You just want a different master that gives you more money. Because what do the people not in college do? The dropouts, they start businesses.
Yeah,
you have the Silicon Valley. You have these people that just be like, well, the degree is not going to do anything for me. I want to be my own boss. And so I'm going to do something in order to produce wealth. So I'm my own boss. There's a difference in that thinking. And so when you look at the mass population, the majority of people want to be enslaved. It isn't so much that's an aggression that you just want to enslave people. It's like, it is for their betterment. If I walk to a regular average person anywhere and be like, quit your job, just quit it and make your own money. Most people are like, I don't know what to do. Like they'll wake up in the morning and be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And it's like, and right there, like there's the Catholic connection is that, how do Catholics define it? Well, first, how do libertarians define liberty? It's in a negative sense. It's an absence of aggression.
Whatever I want to do, I can.
Well, it's like, no, that's not it.
Unlimited choice forever, always.
And it's like, it's like they want to have a aggression, like a free from aggression. There's no constraint for me at all.
Well, whereas I can do whatever I want at any time ever.
Yeah, without
always.
Yeah,
it's like I have a right. Yeah, with like
I have a right to do whatever I want, always, whenever. What? This is true.
Yeah. It's like looking up in the air, just keep adding more shit to it.
Yeah, I as a libertarian want to do whatever I want, whenever, for whatever reason I want.
Yes, it's except for aggression.
However,
which is all a redefinition of liberty. Because
it has very little to do with the classical definition of liberty,
which is the freedom to choose the good.
Exactly.
And it's like, because let's say like you're a libertarian, you're like, I can do whatever I want, good or evil, and and you can't use aggression against me for that. It's like, do people want to choose evil? No. It's like evil has bad consequences for them. They know that. It's like, I want the thing that gives me a better choice.
Well, if
I want
to choose evil, they wouldn't like kill each other.
Well, so, basically, it's like
they don't choose it for the sake of its evilness.
Yeah,
they choose it for the consequence of.
Yeah, that they normally like
the
Socrates,
practical.
Yeah, like Socrates normally says that people choose the bad not for the sake of the bad, but they choose it because of what good it gives you, like pleasure.
Exactly.
Kill my wife for her insurance policy, or something.
Yeah, it's like they're always
married a woman or something, but
yeah.
But think like supply and demand. It's like the demand people want is for the good. It's like they want it's like they want the liberty to choose the good, the freedom to choose the good is like the thing they're willing to pay for. So supply and demand. Someone's going to give it to them, and like they're not asking for like the freedom for aggression. They don't want that. It's like it's literally not in demand. Like the demand,
I see what you mean. Yeah. The whole
demand is for the Catholic definition
of negative rights is complete nonsense there. But and I do think that a more coherent comprehension of it really would be, like the reason why I think it is proper to have like slaves and serfs and all that shit is because they don't the issue with individual people. The issue with individual people is that they don't.
It's because you're brown, Jeremy.
They don't normally.
Well, I'm sure there's some Spanish in there. That's probably where it comes from.
Maybe, yeah. Well, yeah,
definitely not the black.
My who was it? So my great grandparents were from Madrid on both sides of my family.
Madrid.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
There is a lot of Spanish.
No, but also black.
Yes, I know.
A quarter of it.
Yes, a quarter black. Yes, and so there is a lot of necessity for having the authority to put people in a place where they ought to be, and I think this is where I agree with Plato's Republic, where the thing is that what is normally good for the average person is for an authority to tell them what is good for them. That if you leave them to their own devices, they normally begin to choose their own appetites, which is actually detrimental to their existence. And so
it takes a rare man to control his appetites.
It does, right. And so having a structure where these people are enslaved, and so you create rules, boundaries, and limitations for their behavior that is always geared towards the good, it's actually for their benefit. They'll be
something they're willing to pay for. Are you kidding? It's like not just in their benefit, they know it. It's like if you go up to
intuitively they do, yeah. So even like in Europe, so living in Belgium, they have a tracking system, right? And so within the tracking system education, there is much less anxiety.
Like it's you go from middle school to a technical school or a high school or something. Yeah. They do that in Germany as well.
And youth do not have anxiety about their career. Youth do not have anxiety for the future. Yeah. They don't have the same issues that Americans do, where they're 16-year-olds trying to kill themselves.
The death of the family business was.
Yeah, and so like having a structure in which points these children towards a direction where they ought to be is actually more beneficial for them psychologically. And so you could see their reaction is actually being more positive because it's not detrimental by simply saying,
well, there's peace
just
in
do what you
what
want.
will happen.
There is,
at least in part.
Yeah, and so that's why I think the average individual.
I do have moments where I yearn for. Oh, I wish my dad was a shoemaker. And then taught me how to make shoes.
Yeah, then you just already would have your career.
I just know how to do this.
Yeah, and then you won't feel that despair of like, what am I doing?
I want to go to a university and figure out what the hell I'm going to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, hey, you're 18 now. What do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Live, eat, sleep.
Yeah, it's really daunting for a young person when you just give them that. And so that's why I think enslavement is proper. People ought to be enslaved by proper masters.
And you mean that like a family, logically.
Yes, a family.
You don't mean like whipped. You don't mean necessarily.
Some people need to be whipped.
Yeah, some people need to be whipped
in the face.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
aggressed.
Yeah. Especially the Jews. And starved,
God.
Jeremy's like sitting here like, I need to make a Jew joke. I need to make a Jew joke. I need to make a Jew joke.
It's like, it's okay. He's brown. He can make those jokes.
Yes, yeah.
He's quarter black and brown. So.
But yeah, and like if you are like, but like if you don't realize this about people, it's like, how have you never met other people who like, yeah, I want authority. It's like, I don't want like a flat hierarchy that doesn't tell me what to do. It's like I don't know all the other stuff. I was like, I'm not like an angel where I can like just know everything basically, or just like, or reflect on one thing at a time and just know it all at once. It's like, that's not how humans work. And it's like, they want this authority. It's good for them. It's good for them. And they're willing to pay for it. It's like, it's so good. They're willing to pay for it. It's like, why do you get to take that away from people? You're taking people out of their natural state.
That's why they pay for college, because they are willing to pay thousands of dollars for it.
That's why they respect the professors so much.
Yeah. And this is where I think the left gets it right, but they have wrong masters. And so like this is why the left constantly appeals to authority. They appeal like to the climate scientists. They appeal to other
appeal to
scientists. Yes, at times, the ones who drinks their baby's bloods.
Yeah.
But they do appeal to authority constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's all they have.
Right. But whenever the right starts making fun of them for that, it was like, well, you're actually not being proper. You should appeal to a more proper authority. Oh, yeah. It shouldn't be the elimination of authority. It should be a correctly ordered authority where they're actually pointing you towards the right direction.
That's their subjectivism. It's like when you adopt subjectivism, you make yourself the authority because what's in here is objective. It's like you make your internal mind objective. It's the only thing you can possibly know, and therefore the external is actually all subjective, and you can just make it whatever you want. When the reality is the reverse, where your mind is whatever you want to make it, and the object outside of you is reality. And it's like you can't really make that anything you want. It's like anything you can imagine. And so like when you do that, you make yourself the only authority. It's like you are the authority that remakes all the rest of reality to your objectively knowable own thoughts. And like that's totalitarianism right there. I mean, that's why subjectivism which is again open to, which is like presupposed in all liberal ideologies, necessarily leads towards totalitarianism. It's like if you don't have a proper view of myself and reality, of subject and object, you wind up at literally totalitarianism right from the root, which is again why libertarianism will eventually lead to totalitarianism, as that it's presupposing that I can make reality whatever I want. It's all subjective. And so this is what's going to happen if you don't actually if you don't understand, like, because they don't understand this about people. It's like people don't want the ability to choose evil. They only want to choose between goods. It's like the only thing they're interested in is I want to choose a good or a greater good. And it's like I want to choose to like go to college and get a great job, or go to college and get a better job, or something I want the better choice, whatever that is for me. And like they don't want to pay for like, it's like, oh yeah, you'll be free to do whatever drugs you want. You'll be free to like gamble away all your money, or you'll be free to like bang the hooker who's probably got an STD or something like that. It's like all these choices. Like I don't want
bang the AIDS hooker.
It's like your son will have the freedom to choose his own gender. It's like I really don't want that one.
Oh,
like no. I say like that's not the kind of freedom that they want. It's like that kind of freedom just exists. Freedom. It's like I'm not more free because I'm like addicted to drugs or banging hookers.
No, right? Yeah. I mean,
it's antithetical to freedom.
Yeah, you just enslave yourself into the appetites and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's normally the complications I have with both the left and the right structure in the American system, is that I think both of them are flawed because they both have. It's weird because the left, in many ways, I think their intuitions are correct.
Yeah,
and I hate to say that, but I think it is true. It's when they look at the right.
Did you vote for Obama once or twice?
Once, yeah. and well, I was raised a Democrat.
No, you're brown and black. So.
Yes, yeah. But you know, when I see like the discussions normally having, many of the people on the right talk about thinking for yourself, and when you really think about this, you really shouldn't. You should have a properly structured, long tradition of correct thought in which you partake and begin to comprehend.
That's real right tradition. Wing.
Yes, like that is a true sense of coming out truth. What the American right normally says is just no. That's nonsense. That's chaos. People don't have the capacity on their own to simply not know truth. I think truth is revealed in many different intellects, and if you have a proper tradition, you can partake within that. And then people on the left correctly say, no, you need to trust authority, but yet they trust the most ridiculous authorities who don't have a very long tradition. 100 or 200 years is really not that long in comparison.
Oh, not even that. It's like trust Fauci.
Yes. Yes, some of them only like 60 years of tradition, and so they want to appeal to these like
60 years of tradition.
Yeah, of these short ones that don't really have proper authority, and so
or the science. It's not even a person.
Science. Yes, I know.
I am the science.
And by the science, they just mean things that happened after the 60s.
You're disrespecting Dr. Fauci.
Yes. And so like both of them are just grotesquely wrong, and you can never actually get at the proper like political or philosophical position given their axioms, because it's just no, you shouldn't be thinking for yourself. You don't just read this text and be like, I'm gonna interpret it correctly because I am a free thinker. A proper free thinker is one who is partaking in a correct way to read something.
It's like it's only the truth that sets us free. There's no freedom in a lie. You know what I mean? It's like if you fall for a fraud, you are less free because you fell for it. And it's it's like it was a fraud. It didn't make you freer. It made you less free. And that's how all error works. All things that are false all make you less free. And so if you want the freedom to choose the good must be true. It's like it must be a true good, not a false good, and not an imposter. And you say, so when you're selling people, hey, here's a false good, evil or sin, and here's a real good, and I'm going to give you an equal choice of them. It's like, no, I don't want that. I want two goods that are both true, and I can choose the better of them.
Right. Yes. That's a better view of what actual freedom and choice would be. But
well, real freedom is lack of choice.
And I think ultimately it's always geared towards the good. Yeah.
Well, it's just one no longer has to choose.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is where I connected to Catholicism, because it's like this is why I say like these libertarian ideas really get fulfilled in the Catholic Church, because actually we've thought this through for 2,000 years. And
what do you mean that libertarian ideas?
I guess of freedom and liberty.
It's like if you understand like
but
where they're coming from,
not incorrectly defined as they do.
Yes, exactly. It's like it's like there's usually some ambiguity to what they mean and what they don't mean, and they think they mean one thing.
Ambiguity in that when they say freedom, they mean whatever
licentiousness.
I want. Yeah.
And they think
I would say that when they say freedom, that to which they're referring is not actually freedom.
Yeah,
it isn't fulfilled in the Catholic Church.
And that's what I'm saying is like you get rid of the false aspects and you replace them with true ones, and they'll usually like the ANCAPs, like the Rothbardians, will do a really good job of defining this in terms of property rights, and which again they can't justify, by the way. That is which but they
I feel like it,
where do they go?
If I hear or read property rights one more time in my life, I'm going to convulse and have a seizure and an aneurysm and then die.
Just out of curiosity, I know this is your show, so we should give you questions whenever you come on ours. I'm just wondering, like, what is your background? Like, well, how were you raised? Were you raised atheist? Were you raised Protestant?
No, I had
Catholic, whatever.
A weird background. So my mother was Episcopalian, father was Roman Catholic, and I went to a Church of Christ private school for like 14 years.
Wow.
And so, and so I really got a really good understanding of what the Bible actually says, and I got a really good understand. And I started teaching myself apologetics at 9, and so because I realized pretty quickly, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about. This doesn't make sense. It seems very intuitively wrong. And I went to the Catholic Church, got the real explanations for how this stuff works, and started teaching myself that. And so I also went to a Catholic Catholic college after that. And
which one did you go to?
St. Leo in Florida.
Oh, you said Misericordia.
No, it was really, really good experience. And so it's like I was always like kind of temperamentally libertarian. I'm not anymore a bit, but it's like I was always like, understanding what is the church actually teaching, because this is always going to be like the higher truth, and trying to reconcile this with how I see the rest of the world. And what I eventually ended up finding out was like, okay, property rights are right. But the problem is they don't work like the way libertarians say they do. It's like they work the way the Catholic Church says that they do, which they're positive rights that come down from God, and because that's the only way you could possibly justify the existence of these things, as we mentioned earlier. That the problem with the libertarians, they have this idea of self-ownership that they can't possibly justify because they presuppose materialism. And and so if you are you have this is like the beauty of like the Gospel of John is like it starts you right there with an actual first principle of, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and all things came into being.
The King James version of the Bible.
Exactly.
Floating above the surface of the water.
Exactly. We have to take shots. This is politically Catholic.
Can I really quickly? You don't have to segue. Remember what you're saying.
Yeah.
The next time I want to ask, or the next thing I want to ask a Protestant, like a real charismatic / evangelical, where in the Bible does it describe the shape of the cross? I'm just curious. Where does it describe that? Oh, is it printed on the cover? Well, I guess if it was floating, if this leather-bound copy was floating with God above the ether. Anyways. Like my background is like I was kind of raised by the Protestants and the Catholics at the same time, and I realized because I had that juxtaposition. It's like, okay, one of these is clearly false, and it's really obvious which one that is, because they have not thought this through at all. And so it's like I already had that like rigorous background where I really knew like what the church taught, and I knew this thing is really thought through, and it's been thought through for a really long time. And so like, in my later 20s, like I really started going back to, and trying to reconcile this, because there were a whole bunch of things that just weren't making sense about the rest of reality. And so if you go back to the church, it's like you find out, oh, they have this thing really figured out. And it makes intuitive sense to like, they've been here for 2,000 years. It's like that doesn't just happen. It's like no other organization is that old or that big. It's like things get old and they die and they get decrepit like the federal government. And it's like that's what happens to all other organizations except the Catholic Church, which is like 2,000 years old and really fucking strong. It's gotten stronger every single century. That's been around. Okay, they're really onto something. It's like, 'cause that doesn't just happen. And so it's like when you look into the history, you're like, oh, this is the organization that built all of Western civilization from the pit of the bottom of the fall of Rome. I mean, from the ground, not just like the ground up, like the basement up. it's like boy was like it was a before there was even any building at all.
Oh yeah, it was like
they had the first idea of what a building was.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I really do think that was like the one. That was the one aspect that even during, I think it was like a good 4 or 5 years of my life where I couldn't really comprehend what was true. So internally, I truly didn't believe it anymore. But the one thing that I could never deny was the fact that the church existed there for so long that something must be right about it. And so that allowed me to never fully abandon the church, even if I was going through like 4 or 5 years of really struggling with its with comprehending the theology of Aquinas and everything, because I was younger, I was in college and everything, and other ideas have just become much more exotic and become more coherent, because I think they're so nominalistic that they're simple. And so as with young mind, I think anybody that was raised, because like me being raised Catholic, my parents are from Peru, both of them from Peru, and so it's like you're just default Catholic. Being a Peruvian and being a Catholic is like being a Jew, kind of, like it doesn't matter how long.
Oh, it's way worse than being a Jew. It's like way more Peruvians were killed by the Spanish than Jews in the Holocaust.
No. What I mean is that no matter how long you don't go to mass, you're still socially Catholic. It's like it just exists in your blood, and so there was a time where I just nothing really made sense to me, and other ideas that I was reading at the time, like I was reading a lot of Nietzsche and everything, was making much more sense to me at that point. And so but the very fact that this is an institution, and an institution that had many epochs of like corruption throughout its ages, right? It wasn't like yes, like it wasn't clean. And then I see like other institutions or governmental systems where there's even a little bit, like a fraction of the corruption you find in there, and it collapses within the few years.
You look at like a Protestant church, it's like that. It's like, oh my God, that the pastor banged a kid. Is like that church is dead.
Oh, that's a very distinct memory for me, is the pastor of the church coming out as having an affair and stepping down, and everyone freaks out.
It destroys it. And there's some churches that literally end up closing until another pastor
they close their strip mall.
They do, they close their strip mall. There's that one in Diamond,
their lease.
There was that one in the Diamond Center that happened. But there's a lot of those things, and so like even just a minor scandal just completely abolishes it. And then you literally have like
TFW, no lesser goods.
Yeah, what is TFW stuff?
That feeling when no lesser goods.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
but the fact that the church existed through all of that, through all of its own corruptions, and then on top of that, it survived the fall of the Roman Empire, and then the rise of the Holy Roman Empire, or the rise of the Byzantine Empire, and then the fall of those ones, and then you just keep seeing it. And the one institution that survived all of them was the Catholic Church. It's like, okay, well, even if at this point in my life I don't get it, and in my heart of hearts, if I am truly honest with myself, I'm not believing in it, I can't fully leave it because of this reality. And the longer that the church lasts, I think the more difficult it's going to be for many people to deny its validity.
I mean, that's my proof for the Catholic Church, that I loved so much, is that whenever they, like Protestants or Ortho bros will bring up, like all the problems in the church, it's like, I'm like, yeah, it must be Tuesday. It's like exactly. It's like you try this and your system is going to die. It's like we've had literal murderers and gangsters.
I know.
It's like nothing
rapists, gangsters, everything.
It's like there's actually like there's one pope, and the but at the end of the Photian Schism, which was like what start with the actual East-West Schism was in 867 with Photius. A few years later, after Photius is like completely deposed, we won that one because we're the Catholic Church and we're the Pope, and that there was a successor pope who was kind of afraid of the Holy Roman Emperor, not the Holy Roman Emperor, the Byzantine Emperor, because the Byzantine Emperor Michael had killed his uncle, who had tried, and because he was just suspicious he might be usurped. The dude was like paranoid, so that guy's name was Bardus, who got assassinated by the emperor, and so the Pope is feeling kind of like worried. I think his name was Pope Basil, and he was worried that it's like, this guy Michael is really paranoid. He might kill me, so I need to kill him first. And crown myself emperor. I'm Emperor Basil the First.
It
was literally literally the Pope killed him with his own hands.
I know, yeah, it's amazing. You see these stories, or like the very people that sacked Rome. All right, these Norsemen that sacked Rome went to go after the fucking Pope, who tried to take over the Vatican City, and yet they were still unable to kill the Pope and take over the city. It was the very people that took down one of the greatest empires in civilization. I mean, do you think to yourself, there has to be something here? There's no any other explanation just falls short of any sense of scrutiny. It was like there's no way that you could describe this. And like to go back to the book that we're talking about in our episode with the David Bentley Hart, he brings this up. He talks about how the continuity is can be described as merely accidental. And then you think to yourself, it's like, well, it can be,
but you're fat.
But that the explanation of the amount of luck that is required for the continuity is so immense that it is more irrational to believe that this is merely accidents of reality than something that is actually being secured and dictated by the Holy Spirit. Like it makes more sense to say, no, this is protected. Yeah.
It's like that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And boy, have we really pushed that one to the limit.
Yes, exactly. Both externally and internally. Like I just there is no reason for me not to believe that. Yeah.
It's like Satan has thrown the kitchen sink at the Catholic Church. It's like boy, has he tried everything. Like murderers, rapists, gangsters, even like a few attempted heretics tried to get in there and they died.
Even assassins. I can't remember. So I went to a Catholic high school. They told me I don't remember which pope it was, so you might remember better than I do. But there was a pope that assassinated another pope who was having a nun mistress in order to overtake the church. There was a few of those.
I'm thinking like Pope Sylvester. He was I think he was the Borgia Pope. That was the. But for those who don't know, the Borgias were like a gangster family in Italy.
Yeah.
And like they were known for killing other people and just assassinating them for like whatever reason. It's like
the power.
Exactly, and it's like it's like the Pope who ascended at the time, who was a Borgia, was like no different. Like it's like we've had one bad leader after another. It's like there is no organization that's had this level of corruption, this level of poor leadership, and survived. It's like not only survived, thrived, prospered.
Yes. It's like we can barely survive this Biden election. I mean, we can barely survive. Just imagine somebody like assassinating Trump and then overtaking and all that shit. We can't even barely survive election stolen by fraud. That we're holding by a fucking thread with that. Like a senile
Pelosi
old man
being refused.
Yes,
by one, like we're crying, by one bishop. Just
we're literally crying over a bunch of people that broke into the Capitol and was like broke into Pelosi's desk and started singing and chanting, and somebody wearing a horn costume. Like that is making our entire
defense against the state,
our society just crumbling before our eyes. And you look at the shit that was pulled off in the Catholic Church throughout the ages, and nothing destroyed it. And like you were saying, that not only didn't destroy it, but made it stronger every time. You have to at some point be like, there's something different here.
Yes, there's something structurally sound about
yes. A movement as strong as Protestantism, right? Something that strong cannot even take down the Catholic Church. They've been here for 500 years. They might not last for the next 300. They barely last with each other to begin with. Yeah. They're these fractured, splintered heretics just roaming around.
Fighting over whether they make lesbians.
Yes.
Like priests.
Well, it's like if Protestantism is the body of Christ and they keep fracturing like this, what does that look like? It's decomposition. It's like they are the decomposing body of Christ.
I really do think, historically speaking, if it was not for the United States, Protestantism right now would be on its last legs. I think the
U.S. is too economically powerful.
Yes, I think the United States became the church.
It's so economically powerful that it doesn't matter what it thinks.
Is that it perpetuated the idea to go on longer than it really should have?
It's it's so materially comfortable that it doesn't matter what it.
Like, no, not only that, but the ideas of Protestantism lives in America.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so
entire population.
It is. Yeah. And so even when they become secularists, they're secularists.
They're still Puritan.
Yes, in a Protestant way.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about like one, when you say America, you're talking about like 2/3 of the global population of Protestants.
Yes, exactly. Like when you go, like we're living in Europe, and you were to say the term Christian, nobody thinks Protestants. They don't.
Yeah, no.
You're walking around France. You go to Belgium. You go to Germany. You go to Spain. You go to anywhere, and you say are you Christian? They automatically think Catholic.
Yeah,
they're not thinking some non-denominational heretic who.
Do you mean Methodist?
Yes, no. That's and so you have to define it that you're this type, and then if you are this type, you're like, oh.
Well, what kind of Presbyterian?
It's kind of like you're one of the weird ones. That's really what it's like. It's like you're one of those. Okay.
When do you pull out the snakes?
In continental Europe, Protestantism, besides Holland, and Scandinavian countries, is pretty much dead.
The most triggering thing you can ask a Protestant, is when do you bring out the snakes? I have tested this. If someone's like,
where is that in the Bible?
I was raised Pentecostal. I'm like, when do you bring out the snakes? I'm like, not that kind.
And what happened with the Protestants with the snakes?
I don't know. I don't know.
Or they dance with snakes, or
speaking in tongues and snakes. You don't know about that?
No,
you don't know
about speaking of tongues. But I don't know snakes.
Oh yeah, they'll bring out snakes.
Okay, well, but
imagine all these Protestants like, and they bring out snakes. It's like,
stop. You're fucking
no. We should go to a service.
No, it's real.
You'll start
Completely
crying. Real. Yeah, Pentecostals and stuff. Yeah,
wait.
Yeah, and they'll get
completely
really offended. It's like, and then you whip out the snakes, and they're like, "No, we don't use snakes."
Why snakes?
I don't know.
Because of the devil?
I don't know.
It's like some Bible verse that, like, a snake will bite you and you will not die, or something like that.
Yeah, literally. It's just speaking in tongues and like bringing literal snakes out, and they're like with their little tongues.
Did you know about this? Yeah, this is
me. I was raised very anti-Catholic, non-Catholic. Very it's Anabaptist technically. It's not.
Yeah,
it wasn't called that, but
right. Yeah.
So I'm very aware of all these weird. People are like, oh, I was church shopping. And I went to this church and they started talking. They started speaking in tongues, and then there were these snakes they brought out.
And it's like, and you see stuff like that, and that church is going nowhere. It's
no, like, here. I could literally take you to a church that like pulls snakes.
Seriously?
Yeah,
we should go there. And do like a live.
That's like the ABT. Was it Anchorage Baptist?
Yeah,
Anchorage Baptist Temple or something.
Yeah.
They have these little kiosks. What are they called?
Do they really?
Giving kiosks.
Yeah, kiosks.
So Jeremy, I was raised a heretic, a Protestant, so I know of all of these things. And he'll be at some church or something, and he'll text me, and he'll be
for
like,
work,
for whatever. He's not church shopping.
Yes,
He'll be forced into one of these environments, and he'll text me like, "Oh my God, did you know this thing?" About the thing that this church does.
Weird.
But this church has these kiosks that are like frosted glass booths that you stand in with ATM machines. Donate money.
They're credit card readers.
Yeah,
so that you can put your credit card, so that you could.
But
donate.
There's frosted glass. It's like, what do you do if you walk in? If you're a heretic and you walk in and you want to, give the church $20.
Yeah.
And you walk in and you close the door and there's other people around. Do you just stand there and then hope no one recognizes your shoes?
Giving kiosks.
It's like the Protestants are so ingenuous.
They're so weird.
Yeah,
it's like I'm never like their level of creativity is really something we have to give them credit for.
Yeah, I know.
It's like I would never imagine putting an ATM inside of a church. That just would not naturally occur to me as a Catholic.
I know, it's weird, and so
it's connected to the high school you went to, right?
Yeah. Malden Christian School. No, there's and so like I had to shoot this funeral over there at the ABT, and
Anchorage Baptist Temple.
Yeah, and so people were asking me, where to go and everything. So, and so they want to know the bathroom. I was like, it's if you go towards the auditorium, you turn right. And then people looked at me. It was like, the auditorium? You said, you mean the sanctuary? I was like, what do you have a tabernacle there? Do you know what I mean?
The podium looks like a Scientology like plexiglass.
Like, why are you calling it the sanctuary? What is sacred inside your auditorium?
Yeah.
You just have a bunch of seats and a preacher.
So when you talk to these people, do you have to do like a computing, like how much are you able to piss them off without crossing the line?
No, this part was me being dumb because I didn't know they called it a sanctuary. Because it's an auditorium.
It's where everybody sits.
Yeah. And so you look at that, it's like if you go to a concert, you'll be like, you don't say, oh, the singer's coming up to the sanctuary. You say, no, it's the auditorium. You go there, it's a bunch of seats
and stage.
And I'm going to guess,
that
I'm going to guess that the little platform is called the altar, and the man is standing on it. It's like,
we personally never called it the altar.
You never called it the altar, okay? Yeah,
it was just the stage.
Yeah, because that I thought I was being correct.
It's a performance.
Yeah, it's a performance. Exactly.
And they're like, like belting the songs out.
Oh yeah, the one that just
how great is our God? How great is our God?
That song, he said it out loud. It's like, I know you all know this, and the whole song was him asking a rhetorical question. Well, what was it called again?
How great is our God?
How great is our God?
How great is our God?
It's like the entire song is asking. Sorry, you guys never going to answer this question? You're just going to repeatedly say how great is our God?
The song stops. You're like, well, how great is it?
Yes, I was like, what are you doing?
I apologize, Andrew. Jeremy likes to. So if you look at my wine glass, Jeremy likes to pour it this full. And every time I hand it to him, and then just. I always end up sloshed and completely incapable of maintaining focus on whatever we're talking about. So I think it's a strategy that I come off as the dumb one. Because I can't maintain focus on whatever we're talking about.
It's like the dumb white guy and the brown Catholic.
He's like the Jew picture where he's got his hands clasped. And he's like, I know, I'll give him too much wine and then I'll sound more coherent.
Did you know that? What? Did you know that that's actually how Photius was physically described by the emperor himself? He looked like some like horn-faced Khazar.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
He's actually described as looking like a Jew.
Nice.
I look Jewish if I beer. I could
really
easily assimilate.
Too British.
No, I know, but the uninitiated. If I needed to, if I needed to grow my little.
I think I could look like a Jew or a Mohammedan.
So maybe we do a Contra Gentiles. We should do a Project Veritas thing where we infiltrate
who can look more.
Yeah. Where we grow out our little curls, take a little curling iron, whip them around, and wear the big fur hats. And we see who could it could be a reality show.
You know what I really dislike is
Andrew, you look very un-Jewish.
Nah, I'm Irish. It's like it's not going to work.
You're too.
Oh yeah. Well, you're just like 100% Brit.
I know, but people think I look Jewish.
I don't know why. You got the Brit buggy eyes. You have
the Peruvian buggy eyes. I have the British
yeah. You don't have like the hook nose. You have the British like nice profile
straight nose. Yeah, I look like my profile looks like it could be printed on coins.
I think one of the best attributes like in an Anglo face really is their nose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Anglos probably have the most.
Straight that shit is.
Yeah, it's just a very perfect form nose.
But not the teeth,
Not the teeth. Yes, yeah.
I have. I've been to orthodontists for years and they still have British teeth.
Yeah, it's just
genetically. Yes. Yeah, they're like, your bite's fine.
And but anyway, as I was saying about the
as 20 minutes ago.
I know.
I'm so sorry. I had to engage. I hadn't said anything for like an hour. Anyway,
back to like the Catholic Church and it's like we have not been run by brainiacs. It's like there's no like we've had a few of them, but they're few and far between. It's like there's only a few popes we really call the great, and it's because they were really great. The rest were kind of mediocre. And it's like, oh yeah, Francis is some really bad pope. It's like, nah. It's like,
no, not really. Yes, yeah.
And it really begs the question. It's like, okay, so how does an organization have so many really bad leaders? It's not just like a little bad, like really, really bad, like criminal and murderers, rapists.
Where someone like not like Biden would seem like a saint compared to some of the popes that we have had.
He would be one of the better ones.
Yes.
Well, Biden doesn't do anything.
It's like, and you see no other organization in society is like
the Pope.
Yeah. No, that's true though. Yeah. No other
organization does that. It's like, even like the Orthodox is like, they're 2,000 years old, but they have not been prospering for 2,000 years. I mean, that thing has been
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it has been a real shit show.
It has, yeah.
Boy, if you look at you read it like Russian history. Oh my God! This is like they escaped, the Muslim conquest to Russia, only to be immediately like overtaken by the Mongolians and their gentle benevolence. And they had such incompetent rulers the entire time. Like, oh my Lord, these are like the worst pathetic excuses for princes you could find. And it's like that. That's why the best of them is a chick. Catherine the Great.
There's a reason the Slavs are so nihilistic and aggressive all the time.
Oh yeah, it's like it's like why how they
stagnant.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I mean, they're like the largest proportion of atheists in the world is in Russia.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
and the Soviets definitely had something to do with that.
No, but that's what he means is that. The Soviets was a great force.
They didn't come out of nowhere.
Right, but at the same time,
I understand.
Yeah. The church has
encountered. So sorry to trigger you on that.
Greater.
I didn't mean to sound like I didn't know this.
The Roman Church has had to face greater threats than the Soviets.
Yes. No, I know.
Yeah.
And we beat them. It's like,
in the end, we win.
It's like if you look at it's like, oh my God, it's like these were the worst leaders who are often very unfriendly to the Orthodox Church. But Symphonia, of course, It's funny because they claimed that they had Symphonia with Genghis Khan because they were allowed to pray for him, which was like the thing he did for all of the religions. Like the Khans were actually like, they were like very multicultural, multi-religious, and the only requirement was you had to pray to your God, for the great Khan. And so it's like, this is what their excuse for Symphonia is. And so it's like the only reason like the Khans stopped ruling over Crimea is because in 1 year there were 26 of them, because they kept killing each other. And like, this was the circumstance that the Russians were able to retake their country. It's like, this is how bad their leaders are. And so it's like, oh my God, this like the Orthodox have been like had one disaster after the other historically. Like they have not been like thriving the way the Catholics have in the West. And even like despite,
they also live in like literal hell on earth, climate wise. We're Alaskans. We get it.
They just need to go back. It's just like, the Catholic Church, especially after Vatican II, has been so open to welcome them back. Yeah. And the fact that they're not,
they're like filioque.
Yeah, it's like it's on you guys at this point. If the East just crumbles because of
the energies and essences.
This is really, really different. Like really fundamentally different. I was like, okay, man, whatever.
But
you can tell they haven't read
black clothing.
I know. Yes.
It's like you can really just tell like, oh, these guys really haven't read Polybos. Like I did a refresher a few days ago, and there are so many things I've been catching where I didn't catch it the first time, where he's it's like all of the energies are uncreated, but some of them have a beginning in time, and some of them have no end in time, but some of them actually have ends in time as well.
Right,
like they're all uncreated divine essences. Divine energies. So I'm like, wait, what?
So you mean being?
It's
at all.
It's just I really find their disputes against Catholicism so weak that it's hard to ever take it serious in the end.
Well, it's like, and they don't like accurately represent the Catholic position.
They don't.
I mean? It's like they'll say like, the thing we believe in is like papal primacy, and they'll call it papal supremacy, and their position is papal primacy.
Exactly.
Which means first amongst equals, which is why I call them like
do they generally misunderstand papal infallibility?
every time, no exception.
They misunderstand.
They do. Okay.
That's one of them. They misunderstand.
Well, you think that everything the Pope ever says ever is totally
and they always add a word. Like we would say divine simplicity. Would be like, you believe in absolute divine simplicity. It's like, no Catholic theologian has ever said that.
No, that's not doctrine.
Yes, and they do this with everything. With everything, it's the same thing with original sin that I was telling you about. In our podcast, we're like, well, there is a distinction between John Chrysostom and Augustinian point of view, but it's not in essence fundamental. Yes. Because if you were to ask them, like even the Eastern Orthodox, well, do you think there was a consequence of original sin? It'd be like, yeah, there's death, there's suffering, there's all this stuff. Like, okay, then they always interject the word, yeah, but you believe guilt. I was like, no. The Catholic term they use is stain. We say that there's a stain of original sin that each one of us are born into, but they want to make it different. They want to make a distinction where there really is no fundamental distinction. There's only differences in terminologies and there's differences in practice.
We don't believe you inherit the guilt of
exactly.
Adam's sin.
We don't. Yes. There's a consequence to a sin that we inherit. That's a stain of original sin, but we don't carry the guilt. But they keep saying this like as if we and I think that there's some fault within some theologians that use that term at some point in history. Fine, but they're not the doctors of the church. There are theologians that misspoke, and the church never said that. Yes,
it wasn't consequent.
It was right. Yeah,
And then like when you like actually pull these quotes for them, they just like start like I can't even talk with you. It's like they just shut down.
I know.
You're being intellectually dishonest.
Yes, yeah.
It's like they go all libertarian on you. Like if you start talking to libertarians about like
aggress me.
It's like, well, what does aggression mean? As like you actually start pushing back on what they actually mean.
Anything I don't like.
What does anarchy mean? Well, anarchy
anything
is like
I don't like.
There's no, well, it's either there's no state or it's an absence of aggression. And they'll say like, oh, you and I live in a state of anarchy because, we are not aggressing against each other. And
it's so annoying.
So to me, the quintessential anarchist state as conceived contemporarily is the state characterized by anything and everything to which I personally would not consent.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No. But there is
like
what
it is.
But there is
to which I would consent. Yeah.
Yeah. There is a subset of like libertarians who there are like very right wing in temperament. And like, these are the ones I say, people should be Catholics. They should not be ANCAPs. They should be Catholics instead, because like, everything they believe lines right up with the Catholic Church, but they have no justification for it. And if you these are the sort of people that I really think this is like, these people should be Thomists. Is like that, because Thomism actually had like the reason why, and this is how you can tell them apart, is you can tell that like the really right wing good ones, that are worth spending time on, and from the ones who aren't, because the right wing ones, they're seeking property and a system of private property rights because they want good authority, not because they want no authority. And good authority is what the Catholic Church is offering. It's like that is a system of property rights that is logically consistent, that makes sense, is very philosophically consistent, and has actually been tried and has worked spectacularly well. It's like it's really it built all of that like Western civilization from the ground up,
right?
And so like it has everything you want. It's like, yes, this has actually been tried. It's not like real capitalism has never been tried. It's like, actually we had it in like the Holy Roman Empire, and it worked
right
well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So do we ever get to have the conversation where we disagree about rights and property rights and stuff? Or
oh yeah, that's probably gonna be next time, and I'll educate you guys.
Or how about can we have you on?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to,
I don't mean to end the conversation where we can talk as long as you want. I don't mean to kill.
No, it's totally
fine. I hear property rights and I'm like,
so this gut reaction. Because I personally don't have an issue with that. So what is your issue with property rights?
It sounds libertarian.
No, yes, but in that I have a right to own things given by God.
Steward. You have the right to steward things. It's like
so you don't have the right to do anything.
Yeah. So I guess philosophically, with the issue that I normally would have. So normally, and this is probably too much inference on my end when he was talking about property rights. I guess I was not assuming that it is a right given to you by God. I'm just thinking.
I just don't think that. I think that rights don't exist outside of the context.
I normally use terminologies like privileges and things that are inherent to our nature.
Yeah.
And so the issue that I have with the term rights is that rights normally means that there is a particular authority that bestows this onto you,
meaning state authority
or it has to be some kind of physical
not
authority.
God,
because
Well, I like the way, because this is why I like the way Aquinas talks about it. We don't have to talk into the economics here. Let's stick with the philosophy. The way I like the reason I like what Aquinas says is he says that basically all duties presume a right. Because you would have to have that right in order to fulfill the duty. So when God gives in Genesis, God gives man that he makes us stewards of creation. We're here to, we are here to basically steward the planet, rule over it, dominate it. It's like, okay, well, that presupposes we have that right. And it's not just like given to the state. It's given to all men, because all men are given.
Does he actually use the term right, though?
That doesn't sound very much.
That's what I don't know, because I personally, I would have to admit, whatever you're saying, I have not read from Aquinas, and so I would have to research it myself. But it will be very difficult for me to think that he actually uses this term right, because that's more Lockean.
It's not the term type of. It's not the term right, but he makes this point that if you have a duty to do something, it must presume like that the ability to do it.
Yeah, and that's what right means.
And that for me, I have no issue with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I think that I have this trigger within me when I hear right to immediately start to assume that the person is overstepping the bounds of their own arguments.
Because you assume they're talking about ownership or
something, or the God-given right to do something. Because when you talk about Lockean or Hobbesian thought,
right, exactly,
that's what they mean.
Yeah,
it's like, and you can't have a real claim of ownership of anything, because you would have to have a claim on being itself. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That can't work. So it's like, but when I talk about like property rights, I may use the term ownership every now and then, but I really mean stewardship at every single turn. Because the only you have that duty given to you by God to.
What do you mean by stewardship? Specifically,
in that Genesis aspect where
you are responsible for the maintenance of this thing, but it is not necessarily
towards the end of towards the end of God Himself. It's like not just like the stewardship, not just that you are responsible for its upkeep and maintenance, but that you have to do it all within the logical consistency of pointed towards God.
Yeah.
It's like it all has to be tailored towards the highest end, towards the summum bonum. And
so I would say that's Jeremy. I think we're both on the same page. Like our criticism of the non-aggression principle is that it assumes you have the right to life at all.
Right, exactly.
You have any rights given by God, and that's just incorrect.
Yeah, because I do think when we start trailing to that,
you have duties given by God. Basically.
Yes, yeah, we have duties, we have responsibilities, and we have privileges. Like there's certain privileges in which we can partake in. Like we have a privilege to exist, but if God ever wills us to die at any moment, that is His will and His will to be done. And I think the difficulty is like many times, the contemporary version of theodicy, not the ancient version, but the contemporary version of theodicy, I think many times rests on this idea of right. So when you read like David Bentley Hart's problem with theodicy, because he truly believes this is like the biggest issue facing Christianity. He predicates this idea that our existence is our very right to continue. So when you have a tsunami that kills a bunch of Asian people, it is as if God violated the right to life. And so when you normally talk to contemporary people who presents theodicy as an issue, they always predicate it on the idea that we have the right to exist.
Yeah.
And they have a right to that life, and they have the right to live well. Because once you say you have a right to life, the right to live well is necessarily entailed to that. Because when you say you have a right to life, you don't mean to have the right, therefore, to be.
You don't have the right to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's an incoherent idea to say that you have the right, therefore, to suffer. When you say you have a right to life, you mean that you have a right to live well. And I think this produces a a lot of not only theological issues, but I also just think pragmatic and philosophical issues, governmental issues, because then what do you mean by living well? What do you mean that you actually have the right? That is your existence necessary? And so on and so forth. That I think it produces more issues than the necessary. That I think getting rid of that term and leaving that term as being something that earthly authorities gives you, right? And so like I would say a king or a duke or a duchess of a certain property gives people certain rights to function within that property. That's fine. Like I get that. I understand that. But when you say there is a right inherent in our nature, I think we begin to have taken what ought to have been an analogical description of how we exist, and we turned it into a literal description of our existence. And I think that's what ends up happening, because I think it's only analog. It is analogically true that we have a right to life and we have the right to live well, but it isn't literally true. It's like, no, my existence is not necessary. I don't have the right to continue to exist. I don't have the right to be
if
happy.
life is a gift, you have no
right. Yeah. And so life, it literally is simply a gift, is a gift given, bestowed to me by God, in which I am partaking. And at any moment, this gift can be eradicated because I didn't deserve it to begin with. Yeah. And with all the sins of my life, I don't even deserve to continue.
And that's why I think it's much healthier to conceive of that right as a stewardship right rather than an actual ownership right. Because ownership, you can do whatever.
But I feel like even when you say right, the hair still stands up on my neck.
It's like I think there's going to need to be a new word for it, but that's I think
duty.
Duty, but
mandate.
Because it's going to have to be something like that, because it's like, because what is the state? It's like they are here to like kind of enforce the natural law and enforce natural order, and so when they're acting outside of that, they are necessarily acting outside of whatever rights they have to their own property, because basically their realm is their property, so to speak. And so if they're not managing it towards the end of God, like helping support the Catholic Church, help support our education system, and tithing and pushing Catholicism on the people, helping reject the heresies and kick those people out of the property. It's like those people need to be physically removed. The heretics should all be physically removed or taxed. Definitely taxed
or forced to repent. But
it's like they should be. Error has no rights, because error has no existence. I mean, it's like you can't have a right to something that doesn't exist. You don't have a right. That's why you don't have a right to change your gender. Is why you don't have a right to heresy. It's like, because that doesn't exist. Yeah, it's only a negative thing. It's an absence of something.
Well, the state could grant you the right to do whatever.
And I think that this is where
they can't grant you the right to change your gender. It's like it doesn't exist. It's like,
they could though. They could give you the right to do what they think changes your gender.
Right.
That's my problem with the word right. Is it only exists in context of the state.
But it's also, it really only exists in the context of being.
No. Right refers to your relationship with the state. Technically, as far as we define right now, I don't know how like Aquinas would have defined right.
But even like the state has to exist. Yeah. It has to have being. It's like
but it can give you the right to do things that partake of non-being and not prosecute you for them. That's what right means.
Because it does give you certain rights, right? It's really that don't have an actual reference.
Well, is a right a privilege that is protected by law? What is a right?
Let's give something that isn't as scandalous as like the right to be transgender, but something that we all partake in, like money.
Yeah.
Right. So what does money really represent right now?
Yeah.
It represents like a promissory note.
Yeah.
Right. A promissory note that there's a certain value in which it was agreed upon here. And so there is no actual reference to money. Yeah. We look at money, there is no reference to it. Yeah. So it's referring to non-being, it's not non-existence.
Yeah.
But the government still gives you a right to how you function with this currency that has no reference. Yeah. And so there are
or its reference is completely subjective.
It is subjective, but it's also just non-existent.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was referring like to a gold standard, fine.
Well, to say subject, why is every because Hershey's bar of milk chocolate $2?
Right, because what I would say is that currency to gold standard is subjective. because we subjectively value
This is time value.
Doesn't exist.
Right. But when you talk about current fiat currency, that refers to nothing.
Oh, don't say fiat currency.
Okay, fine. If we if we have currency that refers to a promissory note, you don't even have the subjectivity of value of gold.
It's a random thing.
You have it's truly random, right? It's beyond. It's worse than subjectivity. I would say gold standard was subjective. This is not even subjective. This is just
it's nothing.
It's nothing.
I mean, the way the economist would phrase is that it has a time value to it. It's like, what time did it take you to get that? Because that's the ultimate scarcity, and its value would regress down to whatever its time value was, particularly in the future for whenever you want to spend it. And because it's
yes,
an
but
good.
I agree with that. That's what they would say, but in reality, the government
that's even less subjective.
Yes, because the reality, the government can literally print money as it did during COVID. To simply say, I'm just going to give you more money. And that's precisely because there is no reference.
It will have a less time value in the future because of that. And that, because.
Yes, but time value isn't real. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like you could say that
it only exists up here.
Right.
It only exists up here.
There's nothing that it really relates to. We're just trying to grasp at straws to have a legitimacy to a substance that has no referent. Yeah. And so when you say time value, and now you're like, oh fuck, what is time?
Relative.
Time value. Yeah. Okay, are we going to the Augustinian riddle of time, and that there is nothing that exists in terms of the future and the past because they're ever present? That is incomprehensible. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about time. So time value is what are you referring to? And so we don't even have the subjectivity of what it used to mean. Trade in general is a subjective relation of desire. I desire that fucking goat or that chicken. I desire that gold. I do this. I give you a promissory note that refers to that thing because I desire it. That is subjective interaction between people. What we have now is truly, truly fantasy land. We can just make things up. The government right now, if they wanted to, can give every single one of us as much money as it pleases because it could just print it.
Yep.
And the immediacy, what it is just that then we just spend it. And then you have groups of people like, and now I want more of this fictitious reality. And so now I'm going to make this cost more money because this is literally what happens with insurance, right?
Yeah.
It's like, with insurance, it costs you fucking more money. Literally, if you buy a brand new car and you get to a fender bender and your bumper gets screwed and you're driving like a fucking Corvette, it costs more money to put that bumper than it is to replace a fucking engine.
Yeah.
And that's because they know from insurance company, this bumper is really going to cost $5,000. They could do that because it is that arbitrary. The arbitrary nature of money now, just because it has no referent and because, like you said, it is relating to time value. It is not even something existing in any realm of reality at all because there is nothing to which it refers. There is no past. There is no present. These things are things that don't exist.
Explain that, by the way. Explain that time value thing. Explain that there is no past, there is no present, because that's actually a really good.
Yeah, because
the past, say yes, there is, and
right.
Which is why they're wrong.
Because the past, because the past is what no longer exists.
Yeah.
And so whenever we conjure up the past, we're actually bringing in to the present that which was, but in a present form now. And so even memory is present. Memory, you're not actually traveling through time and be like, now I'm remembering that I'm 5 years old, so now I'm actually 5 years old. No, you being 5 years old no longer exists.
Yeah.
Everything of the past is literally would no longer exist. The future, when you have prediction of economic wealth, whatever,
that which may be
that which is yet to exist.
Yeah.
And so which literally means it does not exist. A future does not exist. And so you're in the ever present. But at what point can I dictate that is present? Because the moment that I just described all of that, my description of the past is already in the past, so it's no longer present, which means that it no longer exists.
Yeah.
And so time is elusive in its structure because we're always existing in the ever present.
Well, it's because
we parcel things out.
It's a man-made measurement.
It's a measurement of our interaction with reality.
Yeah.
And so when you try to make anything cohesive in that sense, it is always immeasurable. And because it is immeasurable, it is fudgeable in any way that I want to make it fudgeable. And I think that is what money has become at this point. It's price. So like there's that rich dad, poor dad guy, right? That Asian dude.
Yeah.
I think he understands this very intrinsically, because then he says, okay, if money refers to nothing, guess what debt refers to?
Nothing.
Yeah. He is wealthy on debt.
Yeah.
That is his wealth. He gets himself into debt. He's like, I'm like billions of dollars in debt, and yet I could buy whatever I want.
Yeah.
Well, how is that possible? Like, how does that reality exist? That reality exists because it's literally nothing. You make it to whatever the fuck you want it to be. And so, you know, I know we're going on tangent from what it talks about rights, but what I'm saying is that this is the function that we exist within society. This is the function we exist in rights, is that we're given like rules of how to play a game, and that's all it is. And when we begin to take that term that refers to rules of how to play the game existing in a society, and we're trying to say that there's an ontological reality that relates to being, that's when it begins to complicate it, because that may be true. It may be true analogically and metaphorically, but I don't think it can be true actually. Like, but
yeah, I mean, you're making a good point here, because it's like the only things that exist have existence. And so if you're talking about like Fantasyland, like time or money or rights, it's like these things actually have to refer to something that's real. Yes, and so if there you can't just say, oh, it exists up here in my imagination and my imagination is real. Like, no, that doesn't work. It's like, we've tried that. That really doesn't work. It's like I can't just like imagine that. It's like I use this example with Jeremy when we were debating in our DMs. Like if it, like we were talking
constantly.
Yep. I mean, we were talking about like utility and usefulness, and I was making the argument that like sin can't have any utility because it doesn't actually exist. Utility means both usefulness and ability to satisfy. So sin can neither do it can neither satisfy you, and it's like useful, and it's useless to that end. It has to be a physical thing, but it's never useful to that. It's never useful for satisfaction. And so this is a class of act that actually demonstrably has no utility, has no ability to satisfy, whatever it is that you're trying to satisfy.
And the one thing I did say that I think that would be
into this, or are we saving
just minorly. I don't think we have to get too deep into it, but I do think like the one.
So I have to pee worse than I've ever had to pee in my life.
Get going.
So I'm gonna let you guys go, and then maybe you'll give me a recap.
Okay, I can do that.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
And so the one thing that I would say is that would be true if sin was absolute evil. Like, I would agree with that. If something was absolute evil, that is the case. But whenever we sin, we are still partaking in the good. So even in me stabbing somebody in the neck, there's still the flexing of the muscles, the firing of the neurons, the power of control of my environment, so on and so forth. All these things that I think are objectively, ontologically good. And so even in sin, we're always partaking in the good. And because of that, it is not as clean cut as that. Like, it is true.
Yes.
It is true that if sin was absolutely evil, yes, there is nothing in which it would produce. There is no utility in it. But no act that we do is actually that. All act that we do partakes in the good to some capacity.
Yes. And so to the extent that it does not partake in it, it actually doesn't actually satisfy. There means, and to put this in, and to connect this back to rights. So because, there is this class of actions that actually really doesn't have it has a lesser existence to it. It's like this, we actually can see this stuff is actually possible. As it's like it is possible for something you can act outside of being, and you can see that in reality empirically, and you can see that manifest itself. And so when you are coming up with these these rules for society that refer to things that have no real existence, It's like you are going to have consequences there because that non-existence is going to carry through and follow through. That's just a metaphysical reality of cause and effect. That which lacks a cause which has a partial lack of existence, meaning chaos. That chaos is going to be carried through in the consequence. And so
yes,
you can have
and none of that I disagree with, but the part that I would add to that still, and if this is more of an addition than disagreement, is that
agree.
Even our good actions are not fully good either. The same way that our bad actions are never truly partaking of evil, our good actions still are in many ways self-interested. Like there's a pride that's normally connected to it. There's a sense of victory, and so that's why even our good actions lack, because everything that we do falls short in the grace of God.
Well,
God's act is selflessness. Our acts, we can never truly do. Yeah, we doesn't fully partake in it, and so because of that, there's always a privated reality to all of our actions.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I know what you're saying now. And so, when you're like trying to, but like when you have a system of how do I want, it's not how should society, not how do I want society to work, how should it work, or even how does it work?
Yes, and that's what I was saying, that a prudential claim is perfectly fine, that I would not argue against.
But like speaking for us as a natural law, not just economics, but for natural law, it's like the first question you have to ask for how should it work is, well, how does it work? Because if you can't say it should work in a way
without having the ontological reality of how it works. And again, that's what I agree. But I think that's, now you get into the realm of metaphysics. And so if we do get into that realm, I would say then it is important for us to dissect and comprehend even both our good and evil actions. Because how do we partake in reality? We always partake in reality in the combination of act and potency. We're always lacking in everything that we do. Always, like I could never be to be a complete manifestation of the good, which means that I am God. To be complete manifestation of evil means that I am nothing at all. And so these two things are never in our existence. We're always partaking with a give and take of the privated reality and goodness itself that is God. And some of them will have degrees and gradations of the good.
Yes.
And so there are things that are better than others, and things that are worse than other things. And that's really the only point that we really exist. And then with that reality, we have to say that when we talk about it in terms of economics, in terms of social structures, we also have to think of its consequences. This is where I think the discipline of consequentialism and utilitarianism is important. It isn't important in discussing what is the good in general, but it is important in discussing how then do we exist with one another, because you have to take consequences to account at that point. And so as a political theory, utilitarianism is important. Like we have to talk about its utility. We have to talk about, what are the consequences that certain actions have. And so this goes back to like the quote that I put that many people say Ptolemy actually wrote, but it was actually in a text with Ptolemy and Aquinas. Some people dispute that as Aquinas, actually Ptolemy. It doesn't matter. But in this text, if we don't want to use Aquinas, we can use Augustine in terms of prostitution. And so Augustine, Aquinas, Ptolemy will all say prostitution is an evil act, right? Obviously it is an absolute evil, because you still have a woman, you still have ejaculation, pleasure, so you're still partaking in the good, right? And so in partaking in the good, it's not absolute evil. But the consequences of eradicating it, of making it illegal, would actually lead to other more severe evils that what then do you do when you're looking at reality, and how do you juggle this thing?
Exactly.
And that's where I think it is important, like you said, to look at ontology. It's important to look at metaphysics, but I think it's important to look at it in a realistic way, like how we actually exist. And then from there, we can make proper prudential claims of how to govern a society and how to make laws and what comes after that. So,
and this is why I would say you can't have concepts like, negative rights, which definitionally don't exist.
Exactly.
It's like they definitionally are an absence, like darkness. Like darkness doesn't really exist. It only has a negative existence as the absence of light. And like error doesn't exist. It is an absence of truth. And so like if you're saying rights are a negative concept, you are definitionally saying these things don't actually exist. They are an absence of aggression, which is itself is an absence of
so
really it's like an absence of what?
Yeah, it is.
Absence of an absence. It's like this logically makes zero sense. And so when you hit at the the basic presupposition of libertarianism, it falls apart. And but there's a lot of of good libertarian men who are really, they're seeking it because they want good authority. And when you show this to them, that actually it doesn't quite deliver on that, but let me show you a similar product that actually does deliver on that: the Roman Catholic Church, which has invented the concept of private property. It's like this was like literally our invention in like the 1200s. And it's like basically you had a whole bunch of crusaders who were coming back bankrupt and they needed some money. And so what they did was these feudal lords, they sold their land to peasants who had been suffering under the Black Death, which had, quintupled their, raised by 500% their wages, because less competition. That's how that works. Supply and demand. So it worked out great for these guys. They had enough money to buy their property from the feudal lords who were looking to sell it. And this is how private property was born. And they realized, oh, we need a concept for this. How does this even work? that a peasant owns this thing that now owns. And so the Catholic Church is like, well, we know how that works. Let's talk about natural law and all that. And this is where that concept was born. It's like it's like you can say, like, libertarians will say, oh yeah, private property has existed for like all of human civilization, which is like true, but like it had no like ideological backing to it. It's like it was just kind of a
there's an organic growth originally, but the church did give it the actual theological backing to
and philosophical backing too. It's not just theological backing. It's like this wasn't a word. This wasn't a concept. It was just it existed, but like there was no actual like here's how the system actually works. There was and so what we were coming up with was a real system of property rights to solve this problem in real time, that ended up building civilization from the ground up. We didn't intend for it to do that, but it did. And so it's like if you're looking for like the answers to, hey, what are the problems right now? What are the problems with our system right now? Why not go back and ask the people who built it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this. I don't have the book with me right now, but there's a really excellent book by Tom Woods, who's a good libertarian, about how the Catholic Church built Western civilization, which has nothing to do with libertarianism, by the way. And he did an excellent job going through detailing. We did this aspect, and it kind of reads like a how-to manual for how to build civilization, how to not have it degenerate into a million pieces. And it's like you see these things that that the Catholic Church did. It's like, okay, well, here you can see, here's the solution. It's like it's like the book is like it reads like a manual for how to fix civilization. It's like we need a lot more monks. It's like we need a lot more monasteries, and we need a lot more hospitals and stuff like that. And you see all the and we need actually functional universities that actually teach like knowledge. They teach actual knowledge instead of like gender studies.
The fact that we have state schools and stuff is ridiculous.
I know. And this was an invention of like the state schools were like that. They came around in the French Revolution. Like that was where that came from. Is that the church got robbed. It's like the church invented the university. It was our property, and we got robbed by all the states. And so, and of course, the states didn't know how to manage this, and they drove it into the ground. It is today what it is today because of that. That was not how
bankrupt in any academic sense. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And so like when I say like, hey, this is actually Catholicism really fulfills the ANCAP Rothbardian ideal, I really mean that. It's like this has been we have all of the philosophical backing for it, we have all the theological backing for it, we actually have empirical like case studies of how this thing works. We invented all of the concepts you guys think you've perfected. really haven't.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and there are real problems there. We've discussed them already. And, we've actually and we have that authority because by our success, it's like 1.3 billion and counting. It's like, that
Right.
doesn't just happen. It's like, how many libertarians are there? Like 5? I'm kidding.
Right.
There's not that many. It's like they're like 1%
not.
of the population in America and like 0% of the population anywhere else.
And they all live in Alaska. There's a lot of libertarians in Alaska. It's a very weird state.
And so like you see, we have this metaphysical idea of how things exist, how they have being, how they work. We have a real first principle. We do right now. Yeah, we have a real first principle, but most of them don't even know what that means. And so if you are like a libertarian man who is like seeking better authority, like you are going towards property because you want good authority. It's like this is the sort of a guy, and there's quite a few of them that will naturally be satisfied. They will find satisfaction in the Catholic Church. And because like we have a real system of property rights and that has been created by real authority and has real authority and will yield real authority and will yield you like the kind of society you want to live in. And this is why
wouldn't you say like I get what you're saying, but wouldn't you say that that's just true about everything and everyone?
What
like for example, I would say the same thing about leftism. I would say
leftism.
No, hear me out. So if leftism says that, we need proper authority to dictate what is the good and how we ought to behave, I would say, yes, that would be fulfilled if you adhere to the Catholic Church. If you talk to the American right winger who says we want freedom, I was like, yes, if you were to comprehend what freedom truly is, you would find that in the Catholic Church. Basically, every one of these ideologies does have a hint of intuitive truth in which they are, I guess, attempting to posit, but they're posited just incorrectly because they're not really defining these terms properly. And they're not really adhering to the proper authority that can actually lead them there.
Yeah, with leftism, I would disagree with you that they're saying we want a proper authority that is somebody else. It's like when they say proper authority, they mean themselves and they mean the individual. Like me, and by individual, they mean themselves.
Not necessarily though, because they're the ones that appeal to organizations more than the right does. The left constantly are appealing to.
Yeah, they're not individualists.
Yeah, they're more communistic. They appeal to any kind of authority that is not them. They'll say, look to the climate scientists, look to the psychologists, look at the DSM, look at this. They're always pointing towards authorities, but every authority that they're pointing at is always a wrong one.
Well, this is what, I would say you're confusing what Burnham calls the formal reality with the informal reality. The formal reality is they're saying, hey, look at the authority. What they really mean is agree with me. And so they're only using that authority as a means, not an end.
But again, I don't see how you wouldn't say the same thing to Rothbardians. It's like that's exactly what they're saying as well.
They're leftists.
What you're saying is that with good Rothbardians, that they will find their answers in the church. And what I'm saying is that I do think there are sincere leftists. Like I know maybe you don't, but like I was raised a Democrat. Like I've met many people that vote Democrat that do that. There are just actually sincere. Many of them are. Like many of them are Catholic, many of them are minorities. You could find Filipinos, you're going to find many Latinos that have none of this like overloaded complex semantical terminologies that we're using on this show right now, but they just look at the world and they're raised with the church. And then they see what the left people are saying, and then they kind of believe that because they believe that you should help the poor, you should be doing this, should be doing that. And I don't think that they're ill-intentioned individuals.
Yeah,
I do think that if you were,
I think they're just ill-informed. There are a lot of people who are ill-informed.
Yes,
and I think if you actually put those people, those Hispanics particularly, in a real private society with a private state, they would thrive. And
I agree.
Whereas, like, if you put like a real leftist in a private society, they're going to fall straight to the bottom because these are people who are like
because they don't want to appeal to the correct authority.
Well, it's not. It's more than that.
Because I don't. So for example, when when there's a right-wing person arguing against a left-wing person about climate change, and then the left-wing person tries to bring in an authority to say, well, this is what the climate scientists say, I don't think the move of attempting to present a proper authority is wrong. I believe that the authorities in which they're using are bad authorities. They're not legitimate authorities that could actually dictate to them proper truth.
Yeah, but it's not that they actually believe that it's true, though. That's the thing, is that this is a power struggle. This is something the left fundamentally understands really well that the right does not understand at all. Is that this game of politics is a fucking power struggle, naked power struggle, and it's degenerated into that now, which is good because now it's an obvious game.
So you honestly, or I don't know if you're just doing this to be more salacious, but you honestly think that everybody who believes in this are just in there for the power?
It's maybe not on a conscious level, but they understand it instinctively, and you see it in their behavior. Because this is what Burnham calls the informal reality, and formally, climate science is climate change and all that is about saving the environment and protecting society and protecting humanity, et cetera, and informally, it's a power struggle so they can tax you and regulate every aspect of behavior, because
I'm not talking about life has carbon. I'm not talking about the politicians. Like if you start talking about politicians,
even down to like the individual pleb level, it's like they understand.
What I'm saying is that those individual ones are not there for taxation. They're not there because they want to get your taxes. I think they're in there because they religiously believe it. It's a religion to them. The people that are protesting, the people that are walking and marching and really want, like, scream into the heavens about this stuff, I think they're just falling to a false religion.
No, but the religion itself is power. And you see this in their behavior, particularly because where their religion contradicts reality, particularly where it contradicts political reality, they won't go there. And if you push them, that if you try to give here's other authorities that say, oh, well, climate science, really is missing these. Actually, I have the climate textbook. I actually have a climate textbook right here. I've read.
Yeah.
It's like I'm actually a nerd for this sort of thing. If you show them, okay, here's actually what the science models leave out. Here's these authorities. Here's these papers, that show X, Y, and Z. That is not, that shows a lot of the mainstream is really, really manufactured. It's not not being honest about the sun's input. And it really you can show just like outright fraud. Like, this is fraud, and so, or at least very least malpractice.
That would only be because you're violating their religious belief. I could do the same thing to a Protestant. I don't think it's like a power thing. I think when I violate the Protestants' beliefs by showing them basic church history, they want to reject it, and they get more impassioned, and they would cry even and yell. Not because I think it's a power struggle. I think it's just because I've literally violated their worldview.
Well, and even on it, like with the environmentalists, like if you say, hey, look, nuclear has like zero carbon basically. And if you and they're like, no, I don't want any nuclear. Why? Because nuclear doesn't increase their power. It's like they understand it subconsciously that, for whatever, so however they do it, I don't fully understand the mechanism, but I know I can explain it really easily with economics, the economics of power. But to say, how are you actually maximizing value via power, which is always a transfer? It's not because you're not producing anything; you're just taking something that already exists. And if you line up their incentives, their economic incentives of power, with their actual behavior, it works every time. If you line it up with here's how I actually maximize, the value to the climate or whatever, never works. It's like you always get different. They're behaving. You can see what are their incentives, but from their behavior, you can actually deduce that.
I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think that's unique to leftists. Then, like even if I were to accept that proposition that you made, the argument that you made, I would say this is literally everybody that has the wrong belief. Everybody that has the wrong belief and functions that way.
No. It's something very particular to leftists because they're the only ones that behave incentives of power. It's like they're the only ones that really, really do it. and they do it every time, almost subconsciously and instinctively. And it's eerie how well they do it. That it's like to a T. There's like very, very little, like even down at like the pleb level, that your woke shit lib on Twitter, like somehow knows it, just by instinct. And they do it, like almost robotically, almost deterministically, like a computer, that, where they're following the incentives of power each and every time, no exceptions, almost like a computer. And whereas
again, even if I don't disagree with this, I would say the Protestants do the same thing. Literally the same thing every time.
Not for power, though.
Because they want to have the authority to interpret the Bible the way they want to. They don't want to subject themselves to the Pope.
Okay, political power.
Yeah. I think with every single one of the people with the wrong ideas, you can reduce it to that. I would be hesitant. I would have to think about it more honestly, whether I think it is necessarily always reduced to that. But I would say we can play that intellectual game with every person that has the wrong idea, because ultimately it is always grounded within pride. Like pride is the root of all those sins. And so because of that, it always is a power struggle with you not wanting to subject yourself to what is true. Yeah. And then when you present somebody with that truth, it's reactionary. And then they all react in a very fundamentally similar way, with their zealotry towards the faith in which they formulated all of their
I'm not saying it's not a religion. I'm saying the religion is power. It's not environment. And
yes, I agree with you there. I would say the Protestants are the same. And I would say many heretics and many ideas are the same.
And leftism is a religion of power, fundamentally. It is, and so every time
wouldn't you say that a Lutheran is the same way? How is Lutherans' ideology not a religion of power?
Because it's like they're not trying to maximize. They're not trying to maximize it.
How were they not?
No, because they're trying to maximize what they think truth is, and they have a false idea of that. And that's the thing.
It wasn't merely that. A lot of it was rejection of the church magisterium. A lot like I think the Protestant ideology is just, all of it is just hubris. Like think of what they're saying. They're saying that I have the special ability and authority to interpret scripture. I have the special authority to choose go church shopping, what you're going to do. I have the authority to reject the Pope and the apostolic succession. I. Everything is about the power and the relation they have with the church.
It's like that's I is the thing that's being maximized there, not power. Yeah, whereas the ability to coerce
power doesn't exist without the I. I don't think we could talk about the Foucauldian sense of power as being an ontological reality outside of the individual who is exerting it. I would say the power is only a tool that is used to be exerted, and you can't separate it from the individual who is exerting it. This is what a disagreement I have with Foucauldian ideology, is that we he wants to talk about power and power relations absent the individuals doing it, as if it is an ontological reality outside of it. And I'm saying, no, it's not. There has to be a individual or individuals or groups or associations, whatever, exerting power, and power only exists when the individuals or the institutions or groups.
Oh yes, I mean definitionally, in order to exert power, there has to be something you're exerting it against, namely another person. And and so but with like a Lutheran, like they're not attempting to like force their beliefs onto other people usually. I mean, we had some wars, but there's like we had a few wars, but
but I'd say it's even more intrinsic than that. They want to claim the crown of being Christian. They want to say that everybody before me was not. I am the real Christian. How is that not a power thing? That's an exertion of power. It is an
exertion of power, but it's not. They're not trying to maximize it. There's a lot of different things you would be doing.
If they didn't try to maximize it, and then they would be Catholic.
No, because I wouldn't say we're trying to maximize power either. We would be maximizing like truth and love. As like our greatest commandment is to love God, who is love, and to love our neighbors as ourselves.
But that's why I'm saying that every
which is power. It's like love is power. He's given us a spirit of power and love, as Bible says in 1 Timothy.
I wouldn't constitute Catholicism as being heretical. What I'm saying is that every heresy is rooted in pride. Every heresy is rooted in the power relations between the ones who are denying the truth, and the ones who are trying to exert their truth as the reality of truth.
Yeah.
And I think whenever we look at that, we cannot deny that aspect of it.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that leftism is a unique thing that only does this. I would say leftism is just one example of many that do this.
Yeah, where an exertion of power, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas I would say like they're trying with a leftist, they're trying to maximize that ability to exert power against other people. Like that is the core of leftism, is what I call a high time preference for power, to where they will trade literally everything else for that ability to coerce other people. Is like that fundamental. C.S. Lewis calls it that like a libido dominandi. That lust for no, I'm sorry, it was Augustine who was like that coined that term, libido dominandi, like where that lust to dominate other people. This is the thing that is fundamental to a leftist, that is not fundamental to other heretical groups. Whereas like other heretical groups, they're maximizing other things that are not that libido dominandi. And it is that thing that makes a leftist. And because when you have that as a thing you're maximizing, you will trade everything else for it. And this is exactly the behavior you see them do. This is why, like, when I say like,
I don't disagree that that's what leftists do. My disagreement is that I don't think they're the only ones that do that.
They might be the ones that do it the most right now.
Yeah, right now I think they're the best example of it. But when you look at what Protestantism is, even when you look at the history of the French Revolution, the French Revolution was just a continuation of the Protestant revolt.
I mean, it's like Rousseau was a reformer. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. It was heavily in that. I mean, I think they've like we said earlier, I think they're a dying breed at this point. They're just fracturing and they're a dying breed. And leftism is a secular version of that. But I think Protestantism was that for the longest point. Albigensianism was before Protestantism that for the longest point.
And by the way, that was where is where like liberalism came from, because Albigensianism is a dualism. It's like that left right. There's that dualist structure right there where both have a real existence to them. And it was Manichaeism basically. This is why
Manichaeism was earlier.
Yeah, it's like the Albigensianism was like kind of based heavily off Manichaeism. You see a huge influence in there. This is why Aquinas was, famously trying to debunk, Manichaeism, which was like 17th century. It was like, it was like 9 centuries earlier or something like that. Was that he was dealing with Albigensianism at the time. And so
Augustine was disputing against Manichaeism.
Exactly.
I'm not disputing your description of leftism. Yeah. I'm just trying to broaden it out to say that I think there are other ideologies that has existed and continue to exist in this world that are within that same framework. That I don't think is unique to leftism. I think it's a secular version of Protestantism.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like Satan the usurper, and he has plenty of ideas that all lead to one kind of logical consistency of, basically power and domination. And I mean, because that's his main weapon. That's how he does harm, quote to God. Is by pulling us, by turning us against ourselves and pulling us out of our natural order, which is ordered towards him. Image of God. It's like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's like they all have actions like towards each other, which are perfect and loving.
Right.
And we are made in this image of the family mimics that Holy Trinity. Father, Mother, Child. The Son proceeds from the Father, and like the same way Eve proceeded from Adam. And then you have the two of them together, who that's where you get children and Holy Spirit. But there's not like these are not the same persons. And again, it's a rough analogy, but this is the idea of the image of God, is that this sort of family structure is actually the image, whereas the individual is not, because God is not an individual. He's tripersonal. And so and so like when Satan's trying to he's always trying to damage that trifold relationship and turn it into some way anyway that is not what it's supposed to be. And there's infinite possibilities, which all errors go back to, which I think is what you're getting at. And what I would say is leftism is like the most fundamentally wrong version he's come up with yet, which is like the most the worst apostasy he's come up with. And all other errors, whereas like they do like this kind of power maximization thing, kind of. It's like they're like all of them are like a far cry. They always have some other way they're partaking of being more than what leftism. Leftism has like zero partaking of being. It is definitionally divorced from it via subjectivism, because that subjectivism is at the very root of leftism. I mean, it is a complete divorce from reality itself. So that's why it is the single and like all other heresies, then Protestantism were heresies of the intellect, to where someone made a mistake in their mind and that error propagated forward. Protestantism was not an intellectual mistake; it was a mistake of the will, which was very different, and it was as unique in that characteristic. Whereas the will was the primary driver, not the intellect. An error of the will, Luther's will, was the driver. Exactly. And so this was it was that subjectivism, that nominalism that he had learned from William of Ockham that was what carried it forward. And so that's why, because his intellect itself was completely divorced from reality. And it was it's that divorce that is at the root of leftism, to why it cannot partake in it. It can partake in being to the extent that there is a human, but literally no more than that. I mean, it's otherwise it's not as pure error as you can get.
The thing about, I guess the part that I have a little disagreement in here is that I think what leftism does that is actually better than what Protestantism in its original form is that what leftism does is that it takes every virtue and it perverts it. As opposed to try to introduce anything new, right? And so they say, like the true Christian ideology is that you're supposed to love your neighbor, love people, right? Yeah. And so they would say, okay, love your neighbor is a fundamental good. So what does it mean to love your neighbor? To me, to love the neighbor is to lie to them. And so they're taking something that is fundamentally good, right? And then they're perverting that good by interjecting a sin onto that good. The same thing with poor people, right? It's like, a virtue within there, like a corporeal work of virtue is to feed the hungry. That is act of good in the Catholic Church. And so they're saying, well, now we have to mandate through taxation for the government to feed the hungry. Yeah. And so it's taking every virtue that is good. It's taking like liturgical calendars and making their own like Pride Month and so on and so forth. They're taking the ideas of everything that is good in the church.
Or in the French Revolution, literally making a new calendar.
Make a new calendar, right? Yes.
Literally a new calendar. Yeah. In the French Revolution. It's like,
and so the problem that I have with like Protestantism, actually, I would say is that it doesn't even partake in those goodnesses. Protestantism, in its sense, is such a lie that is not even partaking remotely in some of the good. And so I actually see a greater evil with Protestantism than I do with leftism.
Yeah, I might disagree with you there because leftism is much more comprehensive in the way that it tries to pervert literally everything. Like
it is. I agree with you there. It is more.
You won't find if I told like Martin Luther that this is going to end up with like 5-year-olds getting the balls chopped off because they think they're girls, he would be like, "Oh fuck no, we're not doing that." It's like and the evangelicals to this day are like some of the best opponents of leftism that we have in America. At least in America, and it's like there are ways
but they don't have the proper solution. This is what I'm saying. Correct. So when you look at the American right, I would say the American right really is in many ways just as fucked up as the American left. They're not a proper solution.
I wouldn't go that far.
They are the precursor to whatever leftism is.
I would say the right is misguided, the left is fundamentally evil.
No, I think
because every
brute individuality, like radical individuality of the American right, I think is intrinsically evil. I think
that's the intrinsic characteristic of the American right. I would disagree with you there.
I would say a lot of it is because they don't believe in any form of collectivism. They believe everything's just personal responsibility. Everything's about the individual. That we have to force. They even say that justice is not about the group. There is no such thing as social justice for the right. Everything's individual. It is radical individualistic.
When you understand what they're actually saying, like when you put that in the context of their positive vision, it's basically always like the Christian community and private property, which it goes back to a very, very Christian worldview that a Thomist would feel comfortable in.
I would say yes, so yes and no. I don't think I really don't think so. I don't think Thomism would be comfortable with the American right at all.
Oh no, it's like, but the vision of what the right is actually talking about is kind of a dumbed down version of what Thomism is talking about. It's a dumbed down version of the Holy Roman Empire, really. And so we
would stop right there really quick. I guess this is the part that I'm trying to say is that I actually think leftism is. What I'm saying is that leftism takes the proper structure and it perverts it. It says we ought to have structure, we ought to have authority, we ought to have this and that.
They're not saying that. No,
it perverts that. But they believe in social justice. They believe in the general good. They believe that the sacrifice of the individual, if it's for the greater, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is a perverted view of that. I've actually had much easier time talking to a leftism about Catholicism than I have with a right-wing Protestant. And that's because
but that's because the Protestant, not because of the right wing.
But it's because I don't think you could divorce those two. How can you divorce those two? Like, I'm curious, honestly, how can you divorce American right wing with Protestantism?
Okay, that's fair. I would also point out, like, hey, Catholics, tend to vote. Based on how often they go to mass is is directly proportional to how right wing they are, and how. And if you look at how many times a week like a Catholic might like read his Bible or say Hail Marys, these are directly proportional to how right wing they are, and and so it's like right wing itself is a low time preference for power. It is necessarily I am deferring gratification towards the future for this act of predation or this act of power. Really, you don't have to call it predate because it's not necessarily predatory.
Right.
And I'm storing up my treasures in heaven. Is what it ends up is. When you say to the people, store up your treasures in heaven, in practice, what it ends up translating to is hand them off to your kids. Or hand them off to the church. That's how the Catholic Church got to be the world's largest landowner in human history. That didn't happen by accident. It was it was a direct consequence of that teaching that says, don't live a hedonistic lifestyle. Don't spend, hand it off to your children, or better yet, the church. And so it was a direct consequence of that. This is what if you look at like when the right is all about like hierarchy and the left is about equality. Equality is not compatible with this sort of
I would say the old European right is about hierarchy, not the American right. The American right, is about the abolition of that.
No, they're about the hierarchy of good. It's a hierarchy of good that they
but not an actual hierarchy.
That still translates to actual hierarchy, though.
They want to eliminate any form of that, because, like for example, if I am talking to a person on the left, right?
Yeah,
and I could normally have base things that we could be in agreement on. I could say, don't you think that it is good to take care of the poor? And the person on the left will be like, yes. The person on the right will be hesitant. They'll be like, what do you mean by taking care of the poor? And
that's hierarchy. That's hierarchy right there. It's a hierarchy of good. What do you mean?
But what I mean is that, yes, in an abstract sense, I'm not disagreeing with you, but in a real sense, because we have to always remember that the church is not just purely abstract. It's a strict body of people as well, a physical building with physical humans occupying offices that we believe is being protected by the Holy Spirit, right? Like there's actual popes or bishops. So we can't really divorce the hierarchy of ideas with the hierarchy of the actual physical body.
Oh, but the left can try. They can certainly try.
No, I would say the right does. The right more than the left does. The left actually, like, I could go to a person on the left and I could say, I actually think that speech ought to be restricted. And people on the left would be yes. So we don't disagree with the fundamental, the speech ought to be restricted. We disagree on what kinds of speech should be restricted. We don't disagree that we should help the poor. We disagree with how do we help the poor. We don't disagree with we should take care of life. We believe, how do we take care of life? While the people on the right are much more fundamentally brutal. You could talk to somebody on the right, and here in Alaska, I've heard it many times. I don't know if in Florida is different, but here in Alaska, you could say, okay, if we abolish what is that, abortion in the state, you know, what are some kind of what kinds of things can we implement to make sure that we take care of single mothers and of babies being born out of wedlock or whatever? Most people on the right would be like, that's not my problem. They shouldn't.
Yeah, that's different in the South. Yeah, that's different in the South. We would be like, okay, that's fine, you know, and we would be, and the answer would immediately come that, oh, we need to mandate that you marry the girl you knock up.
No, but let's say you can't mandate that. Like, what are the kind of steps would you take pragmatically to secure that the baby is healthy, the baby's born healthy, and that she actually has support? Very few people on the right would be like, well, yeah, maybe we should, as a government body, pay for at least for the mother and the child while they're going to the hospital and she's out of wedlock. I'm taking care of this child. Like, many people on the right they're hesitant to be like, oh, that's socialism. That's gross.
I have to disagree with you right there. That, you know, because the left would not say we need to take care of the mother. They would say we need to take care of the birthing person. Because there's no difference between men and women. They're equal. Come on, man.
I'm not disagreeing you with the insanity of the left.
You can't use the word mother. It's not politically correct.
I don't want to stand here and people think that I'm defending the left. All I am saying is that I think fundamentally there's more agreement, and the disagreement comes on what those things mean. No, I think what I think people on the right is actually more fundamentally in disagreement, because the people on the right, American conservatism is Protestantism manifested politically. That's what American conservatism is.
Kind of. Yeah. There's you know, some nuance. There's nuance to that is what I'm going to say. I'm agreeing with you.
And I would agree there's nuance to that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of nuance there.
That is what it is fundamentally. And so there is about individualism, because the Protestant, Protestants believe that the individual has the right and authority to interpret the Bible. And when you look at the American right thinks that we have the right and the authority to govern ourselves. That we have this self-governance. We don't need the government telling us how to live. They need to leave us alone. We know how to live our lives better than they can tell us to live. That is fundamentally Protestantism manifested politically. And when you look at most of the structures within the American right, that is what they manifest constantly. It's about the individual. It's about getting the government out of people's lives. It's about the government. The government
but it's not like they're not anarchists. Like, they're not trying to abolish the government.
I'm not saying that they're anarchists.
But the point I would make right here is, like, you know, when you're saying the right does this, the right does that, and presuppose in all of that, you know, is a hierarchy of good. That, you know, this is, you know, that the right is, you're not saying that the government can't tell us how to live. There's like, back the blue, you know, support the military, you know, support, you know, we need an actual government. It's like, it needs to be a small government, but, you know, there's actually a government and that can tell us to do stuff. And that it is a, you know, it's a limited thing, that we just don't need it for, you know, X, Y, and Z. We need it for A, B, and C. And that list is, you know, slightly smaller than what the left wants, which is like basically everything. Because again, subjectivism leads to totalitarianism directly. And, you know, you can draw a direct line from, you know, Martin Luther and the Protestant Revolution straight to drag queen story time. And, you know, with the left, here's something that the libertarians will say. I think this is actually a really good point that they make. Is that you can, you know, one of the ways you can really tell a right winger from a left winger is you can ask them a question. Is like, are some people better than others? And a right wing person will say yes, and a left wing person will give you a speech. And because they don't want to admit it, that some people are just better than others, and some people really suck. And because there's a fundamental equality that they believe, they really believe in and are pushing for, which is again predicted by a high time preference for power. So if you think about
I will say that both American left and the right are Protestant inherently. I'm not disagreeing with that part because I constantly say that the leftism is a manifestation of many of the Protestant ideology comes a bit into play. But I would say fundamentally the right is also, and the right takes many of the fundamentals that created the left.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say when we look at them and say that we have to go back to that, the only thing that's going to end up is back to the left.
I agree. This is actually a point that libertarians will also make, which is really good, which is that conservative also often means progressive driving the speed limit. Whereas the progressive progressive wants to go like 120, like as fast as that car is going to go towards the cliff. The conservative is like, how about like 45 miles an hour towards the cliff?
Yes,
It's like we need to go back to when we were only driving 5 miles an hour towards the cliff.
And so what I believe happened with the left is that a lot of their ideas right now is reactionary towards the right. And as a reaction towards the right, their base intuition, I honestly believe, is correct. The flaws come that everything about what comes after the base intuition is corrupt, and everything that comes out of the base intuition is immoral, and it privates itself from the true meaning of those things.
It's like which is the further privation? It's like you say that they're both left. They're both fundamentally Protestant.
Yes.
Wouldn't you have to say that the left is fundamentally more privated than the right? Because they're so much further along that they're not even in reality anymore. They're saying birthing persons, man.
I wouldn't say fundamentally.
They're far more removed.
But I would say in the actualization of the fundamental principles, yes, but not fundamentally, because they have been reactionary to it. Like I said, just from me conversing with people, I could go to a leftist and be like, in many ways, we are on the same page. We believe some things ought not to be said. We believe that there should be institutions controlling the good. We believe that the poor ought to be taken care of, and so on and so forth. Like all these things we're going to share. The main difference that we're going to have is who is that authority? I would say is the church.
Yeah.
Who can dictate properly?
Agree that should also be the church. It's like the left would not. The left would not agree that
they would not, but the right wouldn't either. When did we see the last conservative president running?
If you ask a right winger. If you ask a right winger who should be what is the institution that should take care of the poor, they'll say the church. Pretty much always.
They don't mean the actual church. They mean believers.
They mean the abstract idea of the church.
Yes. Do you honestly believe that if somebody was running for Republican Party and he stood on the podium and be like, I am Catholic, I adhere and submit myself to the papacy and to all the ecumenical councils and what they dictate as the good, he would not even make it in the top 10 of the primary. He wouldn't.
I could see Ron DeSantis, who's Catholic, actually doing that and pulling it off.
I think that if he were to outspokenly submit himself to the church, he would collapse in the polls.
Okay, that might be fair. Collapse. Yeah, that might be fair. Yeah, we are up at like 246 right now.
That's probably good right now. I probably should go.
Continued in a few weeks on Contra Gentiles, because I have to pee like a motherfucker now.
It was amazing talk, man. You're awesome. Thanks so much for having us on.
I love continuing this. Thank you for having me on. I'm sure Grant is off peeing right now.
Yes, yeah.
But it's thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Grant. And again, check out Paloma Verde CBD, promo code popular. And for 20% off your orders over $75 and free shipping. Again, the products I really love are the CBD salve. I use it on my neck all the time because I get neck and back problems. I use the sports cream on my face all the time. It feels amazing. And I've been baking with the CBD tincture, the 1350 tincture, since probably most of the day, and it's working out fantastically for my sleep and the edibles I've been making as a good Catholic.
Yes, yeah.
Which again, it's like the Catholics. We're not like we're not quite so prudish like the Prots or the leftists for that matter.
Yes,
I should say.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right. Thanks, Will. Take care.
Thanks.